A billionaire hires his maid to pretend to be his wife for 9 days, but what he didn't expect was how it would completely change their lives. Hello, viewer. Thanks for joining us. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. Lucas Reed stood by the towering window of his penthouse on a crisp October morning. Manhattan's skyline stretched out before him. The city shimmered with possibility, yet he felt an odd emptiness. Despite his fortune and the well-furnished loft filled with modern art and state-of-the-art technology, there was a distinct absence of warmth that not even the glow of the sunrise could fix. He sipped his espresso and sighed, recalling a conversation with his personal physician the day before, who had asked if he ever took a vacation. As always, he shrugged it off, burying himself in work to avoid any lingering sense of loneliness. His cell phone buzzed on the marble counter. When he glanced at the screen, he recognized the caller ID, Dr. Hamilton, the family doctor who cared for his grandmother, Margaret Reed. Lucas's heart tightened. He pressed the phone to his ear with apprehension. "Mr. Reed," Dr. Hamilton said, tone solemn, "your grandmother's condition has deteriorated. She asked to see you. I believe she wants to be sure you're settled." There was a careful pause. "She mentioned, again, how she always hoped you would be happily married." Lucas pinched the bridge of his nose. He knew exactly what that meant. Margaret had been longing to see him in a stable, loving relationship before her final days. Now, with her heart failing, time was running out. He promised the doctor he would visit that afternoon, then ended the call. Anxiety rippled through him, though he kept his composure. His grandmother had raised him for much of his childhood, becoming the true parent figure in his life. Her approval mattered more than he cared to admit. A soft knock on the front door broke his reverie. Sophia Martins, his dedicated housekeeper, stepped inside. Her dark, wavy hair was pulled into a practical bun, and her gentle face carried the exhaustion of late nights and early mornings. Sophia was 35, a single mother to a 10-year-old boy named Noah. While she maintained a professional distance, Lucas noticed the worry lines carved around her eyes. He guessed they related to her son's health. "Good morning, Mr. Reed," she greeted, her voice tinged with warmth. Despite the formality, she seemed genuinely kind. "Your schedule today is quite full. I've left the notes on the kitchen table." "Thank you," Lucas said, a bit absently. "Sophia, could you—" He hesitated, clearing his throat. How is Noah doing?" He rarely asked personal questions, but something about Dr. Hamilton's call had rattled him, reminding him of life's fragility. Sophia blinked, surprised. "He's stable for now, sir," she replied carefully, stepping closer. "But the hospital bills are substantial. I'm doing my best." She offered a polite smile, though it quivered at the corners. Lucas nodded, then abruptly shifted the subject. "Sophia, I'll be out for part of the day. My grandmother, she isn't well." He paused, struggling to maintain an air of detachment. "I might need you to handle a few tasks while I'm away. Please keep your phone on." With that, he left Sophia to her duties and retreated into his home office, shutting the glass door behind him. There, he stared at a picture frame on his desk, a photo taken at his college graduation. Margaret by his side, beaming with pride. She had been a strong presence in his life, dispensing wisdom and unconditional love. He swallowed the knot in his throat, confronting the reality that she might have very little time left. By late afternoon, Lucas arrived at the private clinic where Margaret was being treated. The smell of antiseptic and the soft hum of medical machines filled the corridor. He found Margaret in a small, sunlit room, a vase of pink peonies perched on the windowsill. Though her hair had thinned and her hands trembled slightly, she wore the same warm smile that always welcomed him. "Lucas," she whispered, reaching out. He took her hand gently, the contrast of his strong grip and her frail fingers, highlighting how quickly time had slipped by. "Grandma," he murmured, voice tight. "How are you feeling?" She offered a soft chuckle. "Oh, I've seen better days, but seeing you here means the world." Her gaze swept over him, taking in his pressed suit and confident stance. "I heard you're thriving in your business." "That's all very good, but—" She paused, leaning closer. "There's something else I want." Lucas bowed his head, aware of what she was about to ask. "You promised me years ago that you'd find someone who made you happy. I need to believe you're not alone. Lucas, I want to see you with a wife, someone you love." She squeezed his hand, her eyes filled with a mix of hope and sadness. "It would grant me peace." A cold sweat broke out along Lucas's neck. There was no fiancé, no secret girlfriend. He had no partner at all. He'd hidden behind work for so long that romance felt like a distant realm. Yet, Margaret's request was unwavering. She longed for the sight of his wedding ring, an image of a settled, happy grandson. He opened his mouth to speak, but no explanation formed. The guilt of disappointing her stung, but he wasn't prepared to crush her final dream. I'll sort it out," he finally managed, forcing a small, reassuring smile. Margaret closed her eyes with relief, and Lucas felt the weight of this promise like a leaden anchor in his chest. Leaving the clinic, he realized the extent of his predicament. He had only days, or weeks, if lucky, to convince his dying grandmother that he had found someone to share his life with. As he walked onto the busy street, the city lights began blinking in the twilight, each one a reminder of his isolation. The urgent question echoed through his mind. How on earth can I show her a wife when I don't even have a girlfriend? The following morning, Lucas walked into his penthouse kitchen to find Sophia straightening up after preparing his breakfast. He hardly ever took the time to eat at home, but the tension gripping his chest made him linger there instead of rushing to the office. Unable to banish Margaret's words from his thoughts, he stared at the French press, ignoring the dark roast's aroma. Sophia glanced up. "Is everything all right, Mr. Reed? You look pale." Lucas tapped his fingers on the countertop. "I visited my grandmother yesterday. She's not improving." He paused, noticing Sophia's sympathetic gaze. "She wants me to be married," he added, voice tight with embarrassment. "She believes I already have a wife or fiancé." Sophia gave a slight nod, her expression considerate but perplexed. "I've heard you mention her. She means a lot to you." "She raised me," Lucas murmured, drumming his fingers again. He suddenly broke away, pacing around the open concept living space. Modern furnishings in muted greys and blues formed a striking contrast to the panic thrumming through his chest. "And she's obsessed with the idea of seeing me settled before—" He couldn't finish the sentence. A moment of loaded silence passed. Sophia wiped her hands on a dishcloth. "I'm sorry, sir," she said gently. "It must be difficult to know her time is short. If there's anything I can—" Her words sparked an idea in Lucas's mind, a notion so outlandish he nearly dismissed it. But the more he thought about it, the more it seemed like the only escape from this predicament. "Actually," he began, turning to face her squarely, "there might be something." She raised an eyebrow, waiting for him to continue. "I need someone to pretend to be my wife." Sophia's eyes widened in shock. "Your wife?" He exhaled. "Just for a short time. 9 days, maybe, at most. Long enough to convince my grandmother that I'm in a stable relationship. It would bring her peace, and we could maintain the illusion until she—" He hesitated. "I don't want her to pass away disappointed." Her face revealed astonishment mixed with caution. I'm not sure I understand, sir." Lucas steadied himself, choosing his words carefully. You've worked here for a while, and you're the only person I trust to keep this quiet. You see my day-to-day life. You know how private I am. If you agreed to do this, I'd compensate you generously." Sophia's brow creased. "But, Mr. Reed, that's a huge deception. Lying to your grandmother, lying to anyone who knows you." He swallowed. "I don't see another way. Margaret's doctors say she might only have weeks to live. She's under the impression I'm already married. I can't break her heart." His voice trembled with genuine concern. "Look, I'll pay you $1 million, enough to cover Noah's medical bills and more." He could see the conflict play out in Sophia's expression. "I know your son's condition is serious. The cost of surgeries, treatments, this could help you." She opened her mouth, then closed it, placing the dishcloth on the counter with care. "Mr. Reed," she said slowly, "I wouldn't feel right doing this. It's dishonest." "She's an elderly woman in a vulnerable situation." Lucas's shoulders sagged. "I realize how terrible it sounds, but it's the only chance I have to give her peace. She's always believed I'd find love." He paused, stepping a bit closer. "It might be a lie, but it'll be a kindness in her final days." Sophia's hands trembled slightly as she weighed the moral implications. $1 million would change my son's life, she admitted. Voice hushed. "He needs advanced procedures I can't afford. I've applied for assistance, but we've been turned down repeatedly." Lucas nodded, sympathetically. "I'm not trying to exploit your situation. This is urgent, and you're the only person I trust. We'd keep it strictly professional. 9 days, that's all I'm asking." Sophia's eyes flickered with uncertainty, but also with a glimmer of hope for her child. She looked around the pristine, spacious kitchen, remembering the phone call from the hospital that morning, reminding her of overdue payments. Guilt and desperation tugged at her equally. "I'll need time to think," she whispered, almost as if speaking to herself. "Of course." Lucas cleared his throat, stepping back. "Think it over, but please, do it quickly." He paused, lowering his gaze. "Margaret doesn't have much time." Watching her leave, he felt simultaneously relieved at having voiced his plan and horrified by its audacity. He was asking a woman who worked in his home to commit a grand deception, all to placate his dying grandmother's final wish. Yet, as he sank into a sleek leather chair in his living room, he wondered if it was truly his grandmother's peace he was seeking, or his own absolution for never finding the love she believed he deserved. For the next 24 hours, Sophia couldn't shake the turmoil churning in her mind. While dusting the bookshelves of the massive study, she rehearsed arguments for and against Lucas's proposal. Each corner of his lavish penthouse reminded her of what was at stake. She could pay Noah's hospital bills with ease, possibly secure his future treatments, and grant him a chance at a normal childhood. But the lie, it weighed heavily on her conscience. In the evening, after tidying up the spotless marble countertops in the kitchen, she picked up her cell phone to check messages. Noah was staying with her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, for the weekend. She had a text update. "Noah's feeling tired, but says he misses you. He has a mild fever, but we're keeping it under control." Sophia's stomach twisted in anxiety. Her boy deserved the best care that she couldn't afford alone. Feeling a desperate need for fresh air, Sophia stepped out onto the penthouse balcony. She leaned against the railing, gazing at the illuminated Manhattan skyline. The night was peaceful from this height, the noise of traffic a distant hum. She breathed in, letting the cool breeze calm her frazzled nerves. That was when Lucas slid open the glass door behind her. "Sophia," he said softly, his voice cutting through the hush. "May I join you?" She nodded, her back still turned. He moved beside her, resting his forearms on the sleek railing. For a few moments, they watched the shimmering city lights in silence. Finally, Lucas spoke, his tone subdued. I'm sorry if I've put you in an impossible position. She inhaled, forming her response carefully. It's certainly not something I ever expected to face, she admitted. I've been going over it in my head. Every time I think it's too unethical, I recall Noah's condition. Then I feel guilty, considering it at all. Lucas shifted, turning toward her. The faint glow of an outdoor lamp caught the worry in his eyes. I know I'm asking you to lie. I can't pretend this isn't morally ambiguous. A trace of sadness edged his voice. My grandmother is one of the few people who believed in me when no one else did. I want to give her this final comfort, even if it's fleeting. Sophia absorbed his words, her mind drifting to her own experiences of being judged and abandoned. She knew all too well the pain of loneliness and the power of a loved one's support. Slowly, she looked at him, noting the shadows of grief and regret around his features. I understand what she means to you, she said quietly. But if I agree, how would we even do this? Would I move into your room? How would we act around each other? Lucas ran a hand through his hair, clearly grappling with these details. I haven't mapped it all out yet, he admitted. For the sake of appearances, especially for visits to her hospital room, we'd need to present ourselves as a married couple. I wouldn't force you to share the same bedroom in my home. There's a guest room down the hall. But we'd have to prepare a convincing story, how we met when we married. His eyes flickered with discomfort. I know it sounds outlandish. She pressed her lips together. We'd have to be careful with every detail, my accent, my background, the timeline. He nodded, recognizing her valid concerns. Exactly. But my grandmother is our only main concern. She's the one who must be convinced. After a moment of hesitation, he added, I'd also like to keep the circle small. I don't want the entire staff or my business partners to know. If it spreads, it'll become a media circus. Sophia knew his caution was justified. He was a high-profile businessman with a reputation to maintain. Still, the idea of weaving an elaborate ruse felt daunting. She took a breath, considering the child whose health was her paramount priority. Mr. Reed, she began, turning to face him fully. I have one question. If I say yes, will you guarantee that Noah's medical expenses are covered, no matter what happens? Because if this goes wrong, I don't want him to suffer the consequences. Lucas met her gaze with unwavering resolve. Yes, I'll cover every last cent, and if the arrangement falls apart before the 9 days are up, the money is still yours. Noah shouldn't be penalized for any misunderstanding between us. His clarity and the sincerity in his tone melted some of her defenses. The moral dilemma persisted, but a promise like that carried immense weight. She let out a shaky breath and nodded. All right, she said, voice barely above a whisper. I'll do it, but I need to know we're handling this carefully, especially around your grandmother. Deceiving her is something I'll never feel entirely comfortable with. Lucas's expression softened, a hint of relief crossing his face. I understand. We'll proceed thoughtfully, and I'll respect any boundaries you set. Sophia looked back out at the city. The glowing skyline seemed to mirror the strange spark of hope igniting within her. She was about to tread a path paved with lies, but perhaps it would also lead to the salvation her son desperately needed. Although her conscience ached, one thing was clear. Saving Noah overshadowed every lingering doubt. The next day brought a wave of demands from both the hospital and Lucas's business dealings. Sophia woke early to the sound of her phone buzzing against the nightstand. Blinking sleep from her eyes, she read a notification, overdue payment notice. Anxiety coiled in her stomach yet again. Noah's cardiology department expected another deposit by the end of the week. She had no idea how she'd manage if she backed out of Lucas's proposition. She left her small bedroom, formerly the maid's quarters, and ventured into the penthouse's main living area. Lucas was already seated at the glass dining table, laptop open, face taut with concentration. He glanced up when she approached. "Morning," he said, gesturing for her to sit. "There's something we should discuss." She took the chair opposite him, noticing he'd brewed a pot of coffee and set out 2 cups. The small gesture struck her as unusual for a man who rarely showed such consideration. He pushed a file folder across the table toward her. Inside were printouts detailing possible explanations for how they'd met, along with notes about key dates they should memorize. "We need to finalize our backstory before you visit Margaret again," he explained, voice subdued. "It needs to be consistent enough that she won't suspect anything." Sophia flipped through the papers. "So, you suggest we say we met 2 years ago at a charity gala you hosted for pediatric care?" She paused, raising an eyebrow. "Is that because it aligns with my interest in children's hospitals, given Noah's situation?" He nodded. "Precisely. It's believable. We'll say you volunteered at the event, and we bonded over our mutual desire to help kids in need." He cleared his throat. "Then we'll claim we got married in a small private ceremony last summer in upstate New York." A faint flush of embarrassment crept over Sophia's cheeks. "Marriage last summer, but we never told your grandmother until now." Lucas shrugged. "I'll say we were too busy with my business expansions. I've always been somewhat distant in personal matters." She might accept that I kept it quiet to avoid media attention. His gaze hardened slightly. "Margaret's sharp, but she's also unwell. I doubt she'll dig too deep if the story seems genuine." Sophia frowned, tapping the pages. "Still, if she asks for details about the ceremony or wants to see photos—" "Leave that to me," Lucas interjected. "I'll have my assistant create some discreet images using a reliable photography team that can handle confidentiality. We'll keep them minimal to avoid scrutiny." He paused, then added softly, "We're doing this for her comfort, more than anything." She nodded, trying to steady her conscience. Just then, Lucas's phone rang. He grimaced, recognizing the number. "It's the legal team handling a major merger. I have to take this." He stood, pressing the device to his ear. "Yes, Rachel," he said curtly, walking away with brisk steps. Sophia sat there, coffee growing cold, as she flipped the pages of their fabricated love story. Strangely, parts of it felt almost plausible, as though it was a possibility that existed in a parallel world. She saw the lines describing how Lucas, a stoic businessman, had been touched by her warmth and empathy, how she had been won over by his generosity hidden beneath a tough exterior. In many ways, that was not entirely untrue. She had seen glimpses of compassion in him that he rarely displayed openly. Nevertheless, the facade weighed on her heart. Once Lucas concluded his call, he returned, expression grim. "We're on a tight timeline with the business merger. My partners need me to travel to San Francisco next week to finalize negotiations." "But Margaret needs us here," Sophia said, concern evident in her voice. He sank into his chair and folded his hands. "Exactly. That's why I need to streamline everything before I leave. Margaret's doctor says she could have a severe downturn at any moment. We can't postpone meeting her. We'll visit her tomorrow evening together." The pressure of it all crackled through the room, thick and tangible. Sophia worried about how quickly they were forced to move. "I'll do my best," she promised. "But, Mr. Reed, I won't act like a perfect socialite. I'm just a regular woman who—" He raised a hand gently. "I don't expect you to be anything else. In fact, being yourself might endear you to her more. She's always told me she'd prefer someone genuine over a society princess." He hesitated, then spoke more softly. "Sophia, I appreciate what you're doing. I know it's not easy." Touched by this uncommon acknowledgement, she managed a small smile. "Let's hope it goes smoothly." Later, after she finished her daily responsibilities, Sophia retreated to her room and called Mrs. Patterson for an update on Noah. His fever had subsided, but he still needed rest. Hearing this, Sophia felt a faint spark of relief. She looked around the modest space where she slept, a clear reminder of her true position. Though she was stepping into the role of wife to Lucas, she was still the employee trying to do the best for her child. Outside her door, she heard Lucas pacing. He must be on the phone again, orchestrating financial deals worth millions. It struck her how different their worlds truly were. Yet they were about to weave them into a single tapestry of fiction for Margaret's sake. Sophia closed her eyes, hoping against hope that the threads wouldn't unravel. On the day of their planned hospital visit, Sophia's stomach churned like a restless sea. She dressed carefully in a knee-length navy dress and low heels, trying to appear elegant yet understated, someone Lucas Reed might realistically have married. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, heart pounding at the deception she was about to undertake. At exactly 6 o'clock, Lucas knocked on her door. He looked impeccably groomed in a charcoal suit, his tie a muted silver. His eyes roamed over her attire, and he gave a slight, appreciative nod. "That dress is perfect," he remarked softly. "You look like someone I'd choose." Heat rushed to her cheeks at the subtle compliment. This was no time to get flustered, she reminded herself. She had to remain composed, especially for Margaret's sake. "Thank you," she responded, forcing a calm smile. "I suppose we should go." They rode down to the parking level in silence. Lucas's personal driver opened the back door of a sleek black sedan, and they slipped inside. The ride to the private clinic felt longer than usual, tension buzzing between them. At one point, Lucas placed his hand on top of hers, as if to reassure her. The gesture was brief, but unexpectedly comforting. When they arrived, Dr. Hamilton greeted them in the lobby, a gentle warmth in his eyes. "Margaret's been looking forward to seeing you, Lucas." Then, turning to Sophia, he extended his hand. "I'm glad you could come along, Mrs. Reed." Sophia nearly jolted at the name Mrs. Reed, but she managed a polite nod. "It's an honor to be here," she said, voice steady despite her inner turmoil. They made their way to Margaret's room, the hallways lined with potted plants and subdued lighting. The gentle hum of medical equipment filled the air. Sophia's heart pounded harder with each step, nerves jangling. Lucas, sensing her anxiety, gave her hand a brief squeeze before pushing open the door. Inside, Margaret reclined against fluffy pillows, a crocheted blanket over her knees. Her eyes lit up as soon as she noticed Lucas. "My darling boy," she whispered, beckoning him closer. Her voice was weaker than Sophia remembered from the first time they'd briefly crossed paths, but her spirit remained visible in her warm smile. "Oh, and this must be your wife." Lucas guided Sophia forward. "Grandma." "Meet Sophia," he said, his tone surprisingly gentle. "I wanted you to finally see us together." Margaret's gaze swept over Sophia, curiosity and kindness intermingling. "Come closer, dear," she urged. "I want to have a good look at you." Sophia approached, carefully resting her hand on the rail of the bed. Margaret clasped it between her own, eyes shining with tears. "It's lovely to meet you, Sophia. I've been praying for a day like this." Swallowing her guilt, Sophia leaned in and kissed the older woman's cheek. "I'm happy to be here with you," she said truthfully. Deception aside, she did find Margaret endearing. Margaret motioned to 2 chairs by her bedside. "Sit, both of you. Tell me everything. How did you first meet? Was it love at first sight?" Lucas cleared his throat, throwing Sophia a slightly nervous glance. "We, met at a charity gala 2 years ago. For pediatric care." He shot her a look that said, "Your turn." Sophia picked up the cue. "Yes, I'd volunteered there. The cause is close to my heart," she added, carefully referencing her role as a mother to a boy with a rare heart condition. "We got to talking and realized we share similar values. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, we were spending nearly all our time together. Margaret smiled at this, her eyes drifting shut for a moment. "I knew it," she murmured. "I told Lucas years ago that love would find him in the most unexpected place." She gave a soft laugh. "How I wish I could have attended your wedding. But I understand you wanted privacy." Sophia couldn't find words to respond. Instead, she reached for Lucas's hand as if on instinct, and he intertwined their fingers, lending silent support. In that moment, it dawned on her how naturally the gesture came. "Doctor." Hamilton entered briefly to check Margaret's vitals and update her medication. After he left, Margaret insisted on hearing more about their married life. She inquired about little details: who made breakfast, who walked the dog, which they didn't actually have, and how Lucas managed to find time for romance in his hectic schedule. Sophia did her best to play along, weaving small glimpses of real interactions, like the times she brought him his coffee at sunrise, into the fabricated narrative. When visiting hours came to an end, Margaret clutched Sophia's hand once more. "My dear," she said, her voice fragile but laced with satisfaction, "take care of him, will you? He's a brilliant businessman, but he forgets how to care for himself." Sophia's throat constricted with emotion. "I'll do my best," she promised. There was a heavy sincerity behind her words, for she recognized in Lucas a lonely soul, starved for genuine connection. As they turned to leave, Margaret called after them, her voice faint yet filled with love. "Thank you for making an old woman's heart happy tonight." Sophia felt her own chest tighten, fear and compassion mingling. She knew this was just the beginning of a carefully staged act. But if it brought Margaret a sense of peace, then perhaps this precarious gamble was worth the emotional strain. They stepped into the hallway, tension uncoiling from both of them. Lucas exhaled slowly, meeting Sophia's eyes with a mixture of relief and gratitude. In that shared glance, they both realized there would be no turning back. The lie they'd crafted had taken root, and Margaret's hopeful smile was the proof they needed to continue. A week passed in a blur of carefully orchestrated hospital visits and hushed conversations in Lucas's penthouse. Sophia found herself increasingly at Margaret's bedside, reading aloud from the elderly woman's favorite novels when Lucas was stuck in business meetings. Despite the ever-present guilt, Sophia discovered a surprising comfort in Margaret's presence. The older woman radiated warmth and a mischievous wit that reminded Sophia of a grandmother she'd never had. One afternoon, Margaret motioned for Sophia to sit close. "Put that book away for a moment," she whispered. "I want to talk to you." Sophia closed The Secret Garden and set it on the side table. "Are you feeling all right? Should I get Dr. Hamilton?" Margaret shook her head, a playful spark dancing in her eyes. "I'm fine, dear. No doctors for now. I've had enough of them buzzing around me. I want to hear more about you." Sophia's heart thumped. Her gaze flicked to the door, half expecting Lucas to stride in and rescue her, but he was still tied up with a conference call. "What would you like to know?" she asked tentatively. Margaret studied her, a hand drifting over the crocheted blanket that covered her legs. "Oh, I already see a great deal. For one, you have a strength you don't realize, and second, there's a kindness in you that makes this world a softer place. Lucas may have trouble expressing it, but I'm sure he admires that." Heat surged to Sophia's cheeks. She clasped her hands together in her lap, trying to tamp down the guilt roiling in her stomach. She believes I'm truly married to her grandson. The deception gnawed at Sophia, but Margaret's words also swelled her with a gentle pride she hadn't felt in years. "Thank you," Sophia murmured, keeping her eyes lowered. And try to look after him." It wasn't a lie. She did keep an eye on Lucas, albeit in a different capacity than Margaret assumed. Margaret reached for Sophia's hand. Her voice dropped to a near whisper. "My dear, I don't have many days left. That's why I want you to promise me something." Sophia's heart constricted. "Anything," she managed, swallowing hard. "Promise you'll help Lucas understand that life is more than money and mergers," Margaret said, her tone surprisingly firm. "I've watched him become the man he is, brilliant, dedicated, but lonely. The boardroom won't keep him warm at night, and a string of deals will never fill the emptiness in his heart." Tears pricked Sophia's eyes. "I promise," she whispered, her voice unsteady. In that moment, she felt like she was making a vow that transcended their elaborate ruse. Margaret offered a faint, satisfied smile before closing her eyes to rest. Sophia sat quietly, letting the older woman's presence wash over her, recognizing that Margaret was more than just a dear relative to Lucas. She was also a sort of guide for them both, offering wisdom and challenging them to break free from their solitary shells. When Lucas finally entered, he found Sophia by Margaret's bed, gently stroking the older woman's hand as she dozed. A flicker of emotion crossed his face. Gratitude, perhaps, tinged with something else Sophia couldn't quite name. Outside the hospital room, Lucas stopped Sophia in the hallway. "Thank you for staying with her," he said, his tone subdued. "I know how tired you must be." She mustered a tiny smile. "She's an incredible woman. She's been telling me stories from your childhood, how you used to race around her garden, collecting caterpillars." Lucas chuckled softly, though he soon looked away. "Those were simpler times," he murmured, the hint of nostalgia tugging at the corners of his mouth. "You bring her comfort. I've never seen her this content." Sophia's stomach clenched with guilt at his praise. Before she could respond, however, Dr. Hamilton arrived with a clipboard, informing Lucas of the next round of tests Margaret would need. Sophia used the moment to slip away, eager to gather her composure. She's more than a grandmother, Sophia thought. She's becoming a mentor, unraveling the illusions we both hide behind. That night, back at the penthouse, Sophia reflected on Margaret's request. She'd promised to help Lucas see beyond his corporate walls. But how could she influence a man so guarded, especially when she was only playing the role of his wife? As she tried to sleep, Noah's face swam in her mind, his big eyes and fragile health overshadowing everything else. Her promise to Margaret felt huge, and yet she couldn't ignore her own responsibilities as a mother. Little did she know that in Margaret's subtle wisdom and pointed questions lay the seeds of courage both she and Lucas would soon need. The older woman, frail though she was, offered a guiding hand, a mentor of sorts, quietly preparing them for the deeper challenges ahead. When Sophia woke the next morning, she found a note slipped under her bedroom door. The message, written in Lucas's crisp handwriting, simply read, "We're traveling upstate today, pack for 2 nights." She pressed her lips together in surprise. The drive upstate usually took a couple of hours, and she had no idea what this trip entailed. By the time she emerged into the living area, Lucas was on the phone, barking instructions at his assistant. Sophia stood awkwardly, waiting for him to finish. Finally, he hung up and turned to her. "I need to finalize some details about a property that my grandmother wants me to maintain, one of her old summer homes," he explained, slipping his phone into his pocket. "She asked specifically if we'd both visit it, so I thought it best to leave today." Sophia's eyes widened. "Margaret requested this. I wasn't aware." He shrugged, looking somewhat tense. "She mentioned it last night to me. She'd like us to check that everything is in order for a potential family gathering. If her health improves enough to leave the hospital, that is." His tone revealed skepticism that Margaret would ever be well enough to travel, but he seemed determined to fulfill her wish. "I'd understand if you'd rather stay behind." She shook her head. "No, I'll come. If it's what Margaret wants, I want to honor that." They packed quickly, Sophia made a call to Mrs. Patterson to ensure Noah would be cared for, feeling a twinge of guilt for leaving him again. But she reminded herself this entire arrangement was meant to secure his future. Soon, they were seated in Lucas's luxury SUV, the city skyline receding behind them as they ventured north. During the ride, Lucas scrolled through messages on his phone, responding to urgent emails about corporate deals. Sophia stared out the window, watching the landscape shift from skyscrapers to rolling hills dusted with the golden hues of late autumn. After an hour of near silence, Lucas finally spoke. "You seem quieter than usual," he remarked, eyes still on the road. "Everything all right?" Sophia hesitated. "I'm just thinking," she said softly, "about Margaret, and about how you never mentioned this place before. I didn't even know she owned a summer home." Lucas kept his gaze forward. "It's been in the family for generations. My father rarely visited, and I suppose I never found the time either, once I became an adult. Margaret loves it for sentimental reasons. She always dreamed of us having big family reunions there." His voice trailed off, suggesting that the idea of big family reunions was painfully foreign to him. Sophia recalled Margaret's plea for Lucas to let love in, to stop hiding behind his business deals. Could this trip be the first step in fulfilling that promise? They arrived at the property by mid-afternoon. Sophia was taken aback by the rustic charm of the old estate. It wasn't the modern opulence she'd come to expect from Lucas. Instead, it was a large stone house surrounded by towering oak trees, their leaves turning bronze and crimson. A small lake glimmered behind the property, the water reflecting the pale autumn sunlight. As they wandered inside, the house felt eerily silent, dust motes swirling in the shafts of light through tall windows. Furniture draped in sheets stood like silent ghosts of a previous era. Lucas walked through the foyer, trailing a hand over the banister, as though remembering some childhood recollection. "Margaret wants this place ready," he said quietly, almost to himself. "If she can leave the hospital, she intends to come here one last time." Sophia followed him, carefully pulling sheets off armchairs and tables. "It has a lovely atmosphere," she murmured, inhaling the faint scent of aging wood. "I can imagine it meant a lot to her." Lucas paused, glancing around with an expression Sophia recognized as regret. "I wish I'd visited more often when she was healthier," he admitted, voice tight. "I was so consumed by work, I didn't see the point. Now," he drew in a breath, "now time is running out." As they started cleaning and dusting, Sophia noticed how the house revealed fragments of family history. Old photographs of a young Margaret in a floral dress, postcards from different countries pinned to a board, and even a child's drawing of a green caterpillar labeled Lucas's bug. She suppressed a smile, touched by these glimpses of his childhood. That evening, they dined on a simple meal Sophia prepared from a few canned goods and frozen items left in the kitchen's pantry. The atmosphere was unexpectedly cozy. A single lamp lit the wide living room, casting dancing shadows against the stone walls. When they finally retired for the night, Sophia to a small guest bedroom and Lucas to a master suite, there was an unspoken feeling between them that in leaving the bustle of Manhattan, they had ventured into a more intimate, revealing world. A sense of new possibility, coupled with raw vulnerability, lingered in the halls of that old summer home. Both felt it, though neither dared speak of it. Early the next morning, a shaft of pale light woke Sophia. She stretched, remembering with a jolt that she was in Margaret's house, miles away from her usual routine. Slipping on a sweater, she headed downstairs, guided by the smell of coffee. She found Lucas in the kitchen, fiddling with an old coffee maker. "I think I got it to work," he said, sounding mildly triumphant. "The electricity is patchy here. We'll need to get a generator if Margaret wants to stay." Sophia rubbed her hands, trying to fight off the chill. "I'll make a note of that," she replied. She poured herself a cup, surprised by how domestic the moment felt. They were alone in this tranquil setting, forced to cooperate in ways they never had in the city. "Last night," Lucas began, gazing at his coffee, "I was up late looking at old family photos. I found pictures of my grandmother with my grandfather, smiling, traveling, enjoying life. I realized how little I've done of that, even though I have all the resources in the world." Sophia leaned against the counter. "Maybe that's why Margaret wants you here. To remember that part of your family's legacy isn't just about success, it's about living." Lucas nodded, pensive. The conversation felt raw, as though they were peeling away layers of formalities that had always separated them. They spent the morning tending to the property. Sophia swept floors and opened windows to air out musty rooms, while Lucas attempted minor repairs with a toolbox left behind by the caretaker. By midday, they took a break on the stone patio overlooking the lake. The air was brisk, and the water's surface shimmered under a cold sun. "I used to fish on that lake," Lucas said, pointing to a small pier jutting out into the water. "Margaret taught me how to cast a line. I'd spend hours waiting for a bite." Sophia smiled, picturing a younger Lucas filled with childlike wonder. "She speaks so fondly of those days. You must have made her proud." He shrugged, his gaze drifting to the rippling water. "Life changed after my father died. I felt like I had to step up, prove myself as the man of the family. Before long, it was all about deals and profits." Sophia's chest ached with compassion. They were forging an odd, fragile intimacy based on half-truths. Yet, amid the deception about their marriage, they were discovering honest parts of each other, perhaps more genuine than anything in their usual circles. That evening, Lucas lit a fire in the old stone fireplace. The dancing flames created a cozy ambience in the living room as they shared a simple dinner. Sophia found it surprisingly easy to talk about her childhood, though she skirted the details of her past relationship with Noah's father. Her focus was on her son's current struggles, and Lucas listened intently, occasionally asking about medical details. At one point, their conversation fell to hush, and Lucas laid his hand gently atop hers. "I'm sorry you have to carry that burden alone," he said softly. Sophia's throat tightened. "I'm not alone anymore," she found herself saying. "Your help, it's already making a difference." They locked eyes, something unspoken passing between them. The snap of the logs in the fireplace broke the moment, and Sophia drew her hand away, heat rising in her cheeks. "We're supposed to be pretending," she reminded herself, though the lines between pretense and truth were blurring. The next day, they faced a small hurdle. The property's caretaker, a middle-aged man named Harold, arrived to check on the estate. He was surprised to find Lucas and Sophia. "Mr. Reed," he greeted, tipping his cap. "Didn't expect you here. And this must be your wife." Sophia stiffened, her pulse hammering. This was the first time someone outside their inner circle posed the question. She was half afraid Harold might sense the ruse. But Lucas simply extended a polite handshake. "Yes, my wife, Sophia," he said smoothly. "We're here to get the place ready for my grandmother." Harold smiled. "Glad to hear it. Mrs. Reed used to visit every summer, rain or shine." Sophia relaxed slightly. Grateful Harold seemed to accept the story without suspicion. But the exchange reminded her how precarious their facade was. Every moment, they risked someone discovering the truth. The weight of that potential exposure pressed on her, yet she also sensed that her relationship with Lucas was evolving beyond mere performance. As night approached again, they both lingered by the lake, watching the sunset glimmer across the water. This world of pretend had taken on unexpected depth. Sophia felt a pull in her heart, a longing she'd tried to bury. She suspected Lucas felt it too, although neither dared to speak aloud the growing bond that lay beneath the surface of their carefully woven lie. They returned to Manhattan early the next morning, the SUV loaded with notes on repairs and a renewed sense of purpose for Margaret's summer home. As soon as the penthouse's door closed behind them, Sophia felt the city's frenetic energy wash over her, a stark contrast to the calm they'd shared upstate. Within minutes, the phone rang. Dr. Hamilton's voice, clipped with urgency, explained that Margaret had experienced a brief scare with her heart. She was stable, but it was a stark reminder of her fragility. Lucas left immediately for the hospital, instructing Sophia to follow once she had settled in. When Sophia arrived at Margaret's bedside a few hours later, the older woman was propped up on pillows, her breathing shallow but steady. Lucas stood by the window, arms crossed, his face clouded with concern. Margaret beckoned Sophia closer. "Tell me about the house," she whispered, each word requiring visible effort. "Did you find my old fishing rods? I used to keep them in the garage." Sophia gently took Margaret's hand. "We did find a few rods, but they need some repairs," she answered softly. "The house is beautiful, though, peaceful. I can see why you love it." Margaret managed a weak smile. "It's where Lucas learned to live, before the world demanded too much of him." She paused to catch her breath. "Don't let him forget that," she added, locking eyes with Sophia. A ripple of emotion traveled through Sophia. She recognized the undercurrent of expectation in Margaret's gaze. Expectation that Sophia would protect and guide Lucas in a way Margaret no longer could. It was both touching and unsettling. She wasn't truly Lucas's wife, yet Margaret was entrusting her with something deeply personal. Shortly after, James Turner, Lucas's reliable right-hand man, entered. He wore a crisp navy suit and carried a get-well bouquet. Offering a polite nod to Sophia, he turned to Lucas. "I came as soon as I heard," he said, placing the flowers on a side table. "Is everything under control?" Lucas exhaled. "For now, yes. But we need to ensure Margaret gets complete rest. No more stressful news, no more anxious waiting." James's gaze flicked to Sophia, a hint of curiosity in his eyes. She realized he must be puzzled by the sudden presence of a wife in Lucas's life. But if he had doubts, he kept them to himself, turning to Margaret with a gentle smile. Before leaving, Margaret gripped James's hand. "Look after them," she whispered. "Both of them." Then, her gaze shifted to Sophia, and she nodded as though confirming something unspoken. Over the next few days, Sophia and Lucas settled into a new rhythm that blurred the lines between professional, personal, and purely fabricated. Sophia continued her regular housekeeping tasks, though Lucas insisted she lighten her workload and devoted time to visiting Margaret. Yet she also found herself accompanying Lucas to occasional business dinners where she had to play the devoted spouse. At one such dinner, held in a glossy midtown restaurant, she met Rachel Collins, an imposing woman with sharp features and an even sharper gaze. Rachel was a key figure in Lucas's upcoming merger, and from the moment she saw Sophia, Rachel's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "So this is the mysterious Mrs. Reed," Rachel said, her tone bordering on skepticism. "Lucas has been quite private about you." Sophia forced a pleasant smile. "I'm usually not one for the spotlight," she answered, aiming for a confident yet humble vibe. Rachel's gaze flicked between them. "I see. And how long have you been married?" Sophia swallowed. "We had a private ceremony last year," she said, recalling the fabricated timeline. She prayed her voice sounded steady. Lucas, noticing the tension, smoothly interjected. "It was a small gathering, just family. We prefer keeping our personal life low-key." The conversation moved on, but Sophia felt Rachel's eyes linger on her throughout the meal. Once they returned to the penthouse, Sophia let out a sigh of relief the moment the door closed behind them. She doesn't believe us, she murmured, setting her coat on the rack. Lucas loosened his tie, looking equally drained. Rachel questions everything. Don't worry. We'll handle it. The important thing is that Margaret remains convinced. His expression softened. And how are you feeling about all this? It's a lot of pressure. Her chest tightened at the concern in his voice. I'm managing, she said, forcing a brave smile. Though sometimes I worry about how this will all end. Lucas stepped closer, eyes earnest. I do too, he admitted, but let's focus on the present. We'll figure out the rest as we go, Sophia nodded, and they lingered there for a moment, the space between them charged with an unspoken connection. Outside, the city glowed, oblivious to their tangled predicament. In that hushed second, Sophia realized they were adapting, not just to the lie, but to each other's presence. Whether that adaptation would lead to more heartbreak or a deeper bond, only time would tell. Sophia found herself pacing the penthouse kitchen one rainy afternoon, waiting anxiously for Noah's latest test results. Her phone lay silent on the island counter, each passing minute amplifying her apprehension. Lucas had left for the office, promising to return as soon as he could break free from his marathon of meetings. When the phone finally buzzed, Sophia snatched it up, heart pounding. Mrs. Patterson's calm voice informed her that Noah's tests indicated a slight improvement thanks to new medication, though he still needed to be closely monitored. Sophia released a shuddering breath, tears of relief pressing at her eyelids. She nearly jumped when a polite cough sounded behind her. James Turner stood in the doorway, having let himself in with the penthouse access code. Apologies, he said quickly. I didn't mean to startle you. Sophia brushed a hand across her eyes, embarrassed to be caught on the verge of tears. James, hello. I didn't expect you. I just wrapped up some paperwork with Lucas, and he asked me to deliver some documents to you, something about the house repairs upstate. He held out a sleek folder. She took it, trying to compose herself. Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm just a bit emotional. It's been a rough day. James studied her for a moment, then offered a small, understanding smile. I know we haven't really had a chance to talk, and I realize this might come across as forward, but if you ever need a friend, I'm here. Sophia's brow furrowed. She barely knew James, yet in his expression she sensed genuine concern. That's kind of you, she said quietly. I appreciate it. He stepped further into the kitchen, glancing around before lowering his voice. Look, I'm aware Lucas's life doesn't typically allow for close relationships. He keeps his circle tight, mostly professionals and employees. But Margaret clearly adores you, and Lucas seems more grounded lately. I can't help noticing the timing. Her heartbeat quickened. He suspects something. But to her surprise, James simply continued, I've worked with Lucas for years, and I care about him. He might not admit it, but he needs someone he can lean on, especially now with Margaret's condition, and I suspect you might need support too. Sophia felt a wave of gratitude. She'd been on edge around James, worried he'd see through the charade. Yet here he was, offering support without prying questions. Thank you, she repeated, voice sincere. It means a lot. Just then, Lucas returned from his meetings, stepping into the kitchen with a tired expression. He paused upon seeing James, surprise flickering in his gaze. I didn't realize you'd still be here, he said, setting his keys on the counter. James shrugged, just delivering some papers and checking in. Lucas's attention shifted to Sophia. How did it go with Noah's results? Sophia's eyes lit up with relief. Better than expected. The new medication seems to be helping. A smile curved Lucas's lips. That's good to hear. Then, looking between James and Sophia, he added, I'm glad you two had a chance to talk. James has been with me through a lot, and I trust him implicitly. Sophia caught a faint, meaningful look in James's eyes. The sense of an alliance formed in that brief exchange, subtle, unspoken, but real. They were three people who, in their own ways, cared about Margaret and, it seemed, each other's well-being. After James left, Lucas busied himself with preparing a late lunch, surprising Sophia once again with this domestic effort. They settled at the small dining table, windows streaked with raindrops glistening in the grey light. "James is a good man," Lucas remarked, slicing into his chicken breast. "I hope you feel comfortable around him. He won't betray any confidences." Sophia nodded, feeling a strange warmth at the fact that Lucas wanted her to have allies, friends even, beyond their contractual arrangement. "He's been very kind," she admitted. "It's unusual for me to confide in people, but I appreciate the support." Lucas paused, setting down his fork. "You've had to face so much on your own. I never really considered how isolating that must feel." Her throat constricted. "I manage," she said, trying to keep her voice steady, "but it helps to know that not everyone in your world is suspicious or hostile." He exhaled, as though the weight of his carefully maintained facade pressed on him. "If you ever feel overwhelmed or uncomfortable, please tell me. I'm aware this arrangement is far from normal. The last thing I want is for you to feel trapped." Sophia gazed at him, struck again by the cracks in his armor. "Thank you, Lucas," she whispered, her pulse fluttering with unrecognized emotion. They continued their meal in thoughtful silence. The sound of rain tapped against the glass, creating a lullaby of sorts for the city outside. Sophia realized she wasn't alone in this elaborate charade. She had Margaret's guidance, James's support, and beneath everything, Lucas's own guarded compassion. Their little web of alliances was forming, and although the stakes remained high, she couldn't deny the faint flicker of hope that they might pull through together. Late that week, Lucas held a small reception at his penthouse to celebrate a milestone in the merger he'd been working on. Executives, legal teams, and a few prominent investors gathered in the expansive living room, sipping champagne beneath the glow of modern chandeliers. Sophia, wearing a modest yet elegant black dress, floated through the crowd at Lucas's side, her heart thumping. She had to play the gracious hostess, a role she had never imagined for herself. Among the attendees, Rachel Collins stood out, her presence as sharp as the cut of her designer suit. She circled the room with a practiced smile, greeting other guests, though Sophia felt the woman's watchful gaze land on her time and again. Eventually, Rachel cornered Sophia near the balcony doors. "You must be exhausted," she said, voice dripping with polite curiosity. "Hosting such an event requires practice, and wouldn't you agree?" Sophia swallowed, choosing her words carefully. "I'm learning quickly. Lucas has been very supportive." Rachel's lips curved in a slight smirk. "Yes, I'm sure. It just surprises me that Lucas never mentioned you before. Considering how important a spouse is in business circles, one would expect him to introduce you around much sooner." A ripple of unease ran through Sophia. She forced a light laugh. "We value our privacy, Ms. Collins. Public events can be overwhelming." Rachel lifted her glass of champagne, studying Sophia over the rim. "Privacy is a luxury in our line of work," she said, "but I suppose secrets make life more interesting, don't they, Mrs. Reed?" Before Sophia could respond, Rachel caught sight of Lucas across the room and sauntered away, leaving behind a chill in her wake. Sophia gripped the balcony door handle, her breath quickening. She suspects something, but how much does she really know? Feeling the need for fresh air, Sophia slipped out onto the balcony. The night sky gleamed with city lights, and the distant hum of traffic drifted upward. She exhaled, trying to calm herself. After a moment, she sensed someone approaching. "Are you all right?" came Lucas's voice. She turned to see him stepping onto the balcony, champagne glass in hand. She shook her head slightly. Rachel has been pressing. I can't help feeling she's looking for a weakness. Lucas's jaw tightened. She's thorough in business, and she can be ruthless. But I won't let her cause you trouble. If she becomes too intrusive, I'll handle it. Sophia fiddled with the thin strap of her dress. I just worry that her suspicions might hurt your grandmother. If she were to... Lucas surprised her by taking her hand, his tone fierce. I won't let Margaret be upset by rumors or gossip. This is about protecting my family, and right now, that includes you. Her heart pounded at his words. Protecting my family. The sincerity in his voice nearly disarmed her. She glanced down at their intertwined fingers, feeling how naturally her hand fit in his. For a moment, the city below seemed to vanish. Then the balcony door slid open, and James peeked out, an apologetic expression on his face. Lucas, the lead investors want a word about the final contract. They're by the bar. With a quick squeeze of Sophia's hand, Lucas disappeared inside to address business matters. Sophia lingered a moment, trying to steady her swirling emotions. By the time the reception ended, the penthouse was empty, save for a few staff members cleaning up. Rachel had departed without further confrontation, which offered Sophia a measure of relief. She gathered used champagne flutes from a side table, handing them to a passing server. Suddenly, she heard a low voice behind her. You did well tonight. Turning around, she saw Lucas. Tie loosened, exhaustion and admiration mingling in his eyes. Thank you for being here, Sophia smiled softly. I didn't have much choice, did I? She teased, though there was warmth in her tone. But I'm glad I could help. Lucas set a hand on the small of her back, guiding her away from the bustle of the cleanup. He stopped near the floor-to-ceiling windows, which showcased the shimmering city skyline. I mean it, Sophia, he said, voice subdued. This entire arrangement, it's not easy on either of us, and tonight was especially complicated, but you handled it with grace. She met his gaze, her breath catching at the earnestness she saw there. I'm just hoping we can keep Rachel at bay. She makes me uneasy. Lucas nodded. She's an astute woman, but it's best we stay calm. We've come this far. Let's not let her rattle us. He trailed off, words lingering in the air. Sophia sensed he wanted to say more, to acknowledge the unexpected closeness they'd shared, but as usual, the moment of vulnerability slipped through his fingers, replaced by the measured composure of a man who'd grown adept at locking his emotions away. Tomorrow, he eventually said, stepping back, we'll visit Margaret again. She's been anxious to hear how tonight went. Sophia felt a pang of guilt, recalling all the half-truths she would have to recount. Of course, she murmured, following him toward the hallway. Behind them, the skyline sparkled in silent witness to the first true confrontation of their deception. Rachel Collins might be the initial obstacle, but Sophia sensed bigger challenges brewing. Secrets were notoriously difficult to maintain, and the more genuine her bond with Lucas seemed to grow, the more precarious the lie became. Lucas Reed sipped his coffee, standing at the kitchen island as dawn bathed the penthouse in soft light. His gaze rested on Sophia, who was leafing through a stack of mail with tense concentration. He noted the shadows under her eyes, evidence of another sleepless night worrying about Noah's condition. Although her son was stable for the moment, bills and hospital updates kept piling up, each letter another weight on her conscience. Setting his cup down, Lucas broke the silence. I spoke with the hospital's billing department yesterday, he said, his voice subdued. They'll send me a direct invoice for Noah's upcoming procedures. You don't have to juggle it all alone. Sophia exhaled, relief briefly flickering in her eyes before doubt replaced it. Thank you, she murmured. But are you sure? You've already done so much. He reached out, covering her hand with his. I'm positive. Let me handle it. In the past few weeks, Life had become a relentless string of tests for both of them, performing as a married couple before Margaret, managing suspicions from Rachel Collins, juggling the complex emotions that neither dared to name. On top of that, the demands of Lucas's business seemed to intensify daily. Meetings stretched long into the evening. Sophia, too, was swamped with household responsibilities, plus a growing role in helping Lucas maintain the pretense of a blissful marriage. They were forging into uncharted territory, each challenge a layer exposing more of their vulnerabilities. Yet, with every trial, they discovered a surprising resilience within themselves and, even more startling, in each other. Later that morning, James Turner arrived, briefing Lucas on an unexpected snag in the merger deal. One of the key investors had suddenly pulled back, citing concerns about stability in Lucas's personal life. While James tried to keep the details vague, Sophia caught the tension in Lucas's posture. Was the rumor mill starting to churn? Was Rachel sowing seeds of doubt? "Let's not jump to conclusions," James advised, walking alongside Lucas toward the elevator. "But we need to reassure the investors that everything is solid on your end, professionally and personally." Lucas shot a fleeting glance at Sophia, who stood by the doorway. She forced a small smile. "Whatever you need," she called out, though her heart pounded. It was surreal how her presence, or lack thereof, could influence massive business deals worth millions. Once the men left, Sophia headed to the hospital to check on Margaret. Outside the older woman's room, she paused, recalling how their recent visits had grown more emotionally charged. Margaret still radiated warmth and gentle humor, but her health was visibly declining. The lines on her face deepened, her breath shallower. Inside, Margaret lay propped on pillows, gazing listlessly at the muted television. She brightened a little at the sight of Sophia, waving her closer. "Tell me, dear," Margaret began, her words soft yet pointed, "how are you and Lucas really doing?" Sophia managed a smile, taking Margaret's hand. "We're finding a rhythm," she answered, selecting her words carefully. "He's quite busy with the merger, and I've been overseeing some details at the penthouse, but we make time to visit you, at least." Margaret studied her for a moment, a wise twinkle in her eye. "I'm glad, but don't let him hide behind his work too much. Promise me you'll keep drawing him out." Her request carried more weight than Margaret realized. Sophia nodded, swallowing hard. "I promise, you have my word." They spent the next half hour discussing little things. Muffins from the bakery Margaret missed, how the leaves must be changing around the summer house upstate. Yet beneath the small talk lay a silent truth. Each minute they shared felt like a gift stolen from an encroaching darkness. Leaving the hospital, Sophia felt a pang of guilt. I'm still deceiving her. The lie had seeped into every corner of their lives. Even though the arrangement had begun with a strictly practical purpose, peace for Margaret, financial stability for Noah, Sophia sensed how the threads of falsehood grew entangled with genuine care and affection. It weighed on her heavily. That evening, back at the penthouse, she and Lucas worked side by side, reviewing statements from the caretaker overseeing renovations on Margaret's property. They spoke in hushed tones, occasionally exchanging fleeting smiles. Everything felt oddly domestic. Abruptly, her phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Patterson. "Noah is having trouble sleeping. He's feeling some chest discomfort." A wave of anxiety crashed over Sophia. Lucas noticed her tense expression. "What is it?" She showed him the text. Without hesitation, he grabbed his coat. "Let's go. I'll drive." They arrived at Mrs. Patterson's apartment, where Noah lay on the couch, pale but insisting he was just tired. Sophia knelt beside her son, brushing sweat-damp hair off his forehead. Within moments, Lucas was on the phone with the hospital, arranging for a quick consultation if needed. His efficiency and urgency steadied Sophia's nerves. Although Noah's discomfort subsided, The scare highlighted how fragile their peace was. Each small victory, each fleeting sense of normalcy, could be upended by a single phone call. Still, as they drove back to the penthouse, Sophia felt an unexpected surge of gratitude for Lucas's unwavering support. Yes, they faced a cascade of trials, growing suspicion from associates, mounting challenges in the business merger, Margaret's deteriorating health, and Noah's delicate condition. Yet in every test, they discovered glimmers of hope, fleeting moments of unity that hinted at something deeper than any lie could extinguish. A grey drizzle cloaked Manhattan as Sophia hurried down the corridor of Lucas's corporate headquarters. James had arranged for her to meet him there, mentioning something about a group lunch. She wore a simple knee-length skirt and a neat blouse, trying to look the part of Lucas Reed's wife, though inside her heart pounded with dread. She'd never been comfortable in high-powered corporate environments, and pretending she belonged here felt like walking a tightrope. She found James in the glass-walled reception area. He greeted her warmly, ushering her into an elevator that whisked them up to the top floor. "Lucas is finishing a meeting with Rachel Collins and a few partners," he explained. "Afterward, we'll all grab lunch in the executive dining room." Sophia's stomach tightened. Rachel again. That woman's suspicious gaze still haunted her. "Any developments in the merger I should know about?" she asked, forcing a casual tone. James flashed a reassuring smile. "Don't worry about the details. Just be yourself and try to put Rachel at ease if she starts digging again. Lucas will handle any tough business questions." "Right," Sophia muttered, her palms damp. "I'm sure it'll be fine." But when they entered the executive conference room, the tension was palpable. Rachel sat at one end of a long glass table, arms folded, a laptop open in front of her. Lucas Key, seated beside her, looked uncharacteristically haggard, his tie loosened, dark hair slightly disheveled. Two other executives hovered near the windows, silent observers to whatever standoff had just occurred. Rachel's gaze flicked to Sophia. "Ah, Mrs. Reed," she said, emphasizing the title as though it tasted bitter. "Joining us for lunch." Lucas rose, crossing to Sophia. He placed a careful hand on her back, guiding her in. "Yes, she is. We thought it would be nice to step away from spreadsheets for a bit." Rachel's polite smile didn't reach her eyes. "Of course." They soon moved to the executive dining room, a sleek space with panoramic views of the city. A catered spread awaited them, but the atmosphere remained strained. Rachel tossed out barbed compliments about Sophia's ability to adjust to high society life so quickly, while Lucas fielded a barrage of pointed merger questions about company transparency and brand consistency. Sophia tried to maintain composure. She forced a laugh at Rachel's insincere remarks, occasionally stealing glances at Lucas's somber expression. At one point, she excused herself to the restroom, needing a moment to breathe. To her surprise, Rachel followed her out. In the hallway, the woman's heels clicked against polished marble floors as she closed in on Sophia. "Do you mind if I join you, Mrs. Reed?" Rachel asked, voice all sugar and steel. Sophia swallowed. "Not at all." In the restroom, Rachel checked her reflection in the mirror, then turned to Sophia with a predatory smile. "You know, I find it fascinating how quickly you've adapted to Lucas's world. It's almost like you had no personal history before this." Sophia's pulse hammered. She tried to keep her tone light. "I've been private most of my life. That doesn't mean I don't exist outside of it." Rachel drummed her manicured fingernails on the marble countertop. "And what about your family, your friends? Do they ever wonder about your sudden shift in status?" A swirl of panic gripped Sophia, but she steadied herself. She remembered the backstory. A simple wedding, a quiet life. "My closest friends know the situation. They're happy for me," she answered, hoping it sounded believable. A flicker of calculation crossed Rachel's features. Right. Well, I suppose Lucas has always been secretive. I just hope, for his sake, that everything is as genuine as you claim. With that thinly veiled threat, she exited, her high heels echoing ominously down the corridor. Sophia let out a trembling breath, staring at her reflection. She saw the same anxious eyes she wore every time she thought about Margaret or Noah. But now there was an added layer of dread. Rachel seemed on the verge of unearthing the deception. A single misstep could unravel everything. After lunch, as they left the building, Lucas slipped his arm around Sophia. The gesture felt protective, yet she could sense his own turmoil. He guided her into the waiting town car, slamming the door behind them. Once they were alone, he let out a weary sigh. "Rachel is relentless," he muttered. "She's hinting that our marriage is some sort of smokescreen, and I can't afford the scandal." Sophia's hands balled into fists in her lap. "She practically interrogated me, Lucas." He reached for her, brushing the back of her hand softly. "I'm sorry. We'll find a way to handle her. But until we finalize the merger, we have to keep it together." She nodded, emotions tangling into a tight knot inside her. The moral weight of their lie pressed harder each day. She had never anticipated how deeply it would cut, or how precariously they'd be forced to dance around suspicious eyes. Despite all their good intentions, Margaret's peace, Noah's health, the deception was spiraling into a dangerous game. And it was becoming painfully clear that they couldn't keep it up forever. Night had fallen by the time Lucas and Sophia returned to the penthouse, both weighed down by the day's tension. The lights of the city sparkled outside, but inside, an uneasy hush prevailed. Sophia set her purse on the entryway table, then immediately went to check her phone for messages about Noah. All was quiet for the moment, thank goodness. Lucas headed into his office, and for a while she heard only the muffled sound of his voice on a call with James, something about placating skittish investors. Then, unexpectedly, the phone went silent, and Lucas emerged, looking ashen. "What's wrong?" Sophia asked, her heart jumping at the sight of his grim face. "It's Rachel," he replied, slumping onto the living room sofa. "She's threatening to speak to certain media outlets, hinting there's a scandal involving my personal life. She claims it could jeopardize the merger if the press catches wind of anything unsavory." Sophia's pulse thudded in her ears. "Unsavory like a fake marriage?" He nodded, raking a hand through his hair. "She hasn't come out and said that outright, but she's implying I'm hiding something big, that I'm deceiving the board and the public. If she stirs up enough speculation, it could ruin not only the deal, but my reputation. I'd face lawsuits, lost contracts, who knows what else." Sophia sank down beside him, the enormity of the crisis crushing her chest. "This is exactly what we feared." She swallowed hard, thinking of Margaret's frail condition, of Noah's treatment still underway. "What can we do?" Lucas hesitated. "James suggests we confront Rachel head-on, assure her that our marriage is legitimate and threaten legal action if she slanders us. But if she probes deeper, if she uncovers the truth—" He exhaled shakily. "The fallout would be catastrophic." A panicky silence stretched between them. Sophia pictured Margaret's gentle smile, the promise she had made to bring Lucas out of his shell. She thought of Noah, his hopeful face whenever Lucas's support paved the way for better care. The stakes had never felt higher. At length, Lucas stood, pacing the length of the living room. "I've devoted my entire life to building this empire. I can't let it crumble over a lie, but I also can't break my grandmother's heart. If she learns the truth now—" "Lucas," Sophia said, voice trembling, "we have to find a middle ground. Maybe we can talk to Rachel in private, show her some kind of evidence that we're—" She stopped herself. What evidence could they really offer that wouldn't unravel under scrutiny? He shook his head, frustration etched in every line of his face. Rachel is too smart for half measures. If I give her doctored wedding photos or manufactured timelines, she'll dig deeper. I'm honestly not sure how to silence her. Sophia's eyes burned with unshed tears. What if, she paused, hugging her arms around herself, what if we just come clean? Tell Margaret the truth, before Rachel spreads it everywhere. Lucas stared at her, horror sparking in his eyes. Confess to my dying grandmother that I staged a marriage to console her. Sophia, the shock could kill her. How could we possibly... His words hung in the air, thick with dread. She stood, her voice raw. Then what choice do we have? We can't keep dancing on this razor's edge. Sooner or later, Rachel will expose everything. They gazed at each other, fear and desperation mingling in their expressions. The predicament seemed impossible. On one side loomed a looming corporate scandal. On the other, the heartbreak of an elderly woman who wanted nothing but her grandson's happiness. And woven throughout was Noah's fragile hope, reliant on the financial stability Lucas provided. Suddenly, Lucas's phone buzzed on the coffee table, its screen lighting up with Rachel's name. He grimaced, ignoring the call. "We're running out of time," he muttered. "I need to meet her face to face, try to negotiate." Sophia swallowed. "I'll go with you." He looked at her, surprise flickering in his eyes. "Are you sure? It could get ugly." She squared her shoulders, steeling her resolve. "This whole situation involves me as much as it does you. If she's going to confront us, let's face her together." In that moment, a spark of determination united them. Two people bound by a deception they hadn't fully grasped the consequences of. They had to stand as a team, even if the threat seemed insurmountable. The alternative, abandoning each other, letting Rachel's meddling destroy everything, was unthinkable. As midnight approached, they finalized a plan, arrange a private meeting with Rachel, attempt to diffuse her suspicions or, if necessary, broker a truce. It felt risky, half-baked, but it was the only clear path in the labyrinth they'd constructed. When they finally retreated to their separate rooms, neither found rest easily. Fear gnawed at them, whispering that no matter what they tried, the day of reckoning was near, and it might tear them apart in more ways than one. 2 days later, Lucas and Sophia arrived at an upscale lounge on the Upper East Side for their meeting with Rachel. The setting was discreet, yet elegant, with low lighting and velvet accents. They had chosen a quiet corner booth, away from prying ears. A hush fell over them as they waited, sipping ice water from crystal glasses. When Rachel finally appeared, clad in a fitted charcoal suit, her sharp gaze swept the lounge before landing on them. She slid into the booth, setting her purse aside, her posture poised and predatory. "Lucas," she acknowledged, turning briefly to Sophia, "and Mrs. Reed." Lucas exhaled slowly. "Thank you for meeting us, Rachel." She offered a thin smile. "I'm intrigued to hear what you have to say, but I warn you, I won't be deterred by half-truths." Sophia's nerves buzzed, but she forced herself to project calm. "We understand. We'd like to reassure you that there's no scandal to expose, no hidden agenda threatening the merger." Rachel raised a brow. "Is that so? Because from where I stand, there are inconsistencies in your backstory. You appeared out of nowhere, Mrs. Reed, just as the biggest deal of Lucas's career was about to finalize. The timing is suspicious." Lucas leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Rachel, I've known you for years. You know my business record is spotless. Why would I jeopardize everything with a sham?" Her lips twisted into a smirk. "People do desperate things for all sorts of reasons. Tax breaks, image enhancement, manipulating shareholders. But let's cut to the chase. I suspect your marriage is a farce. Prove me wrong. Sophia's heartbeat thundered in her ears. She darted a glance at Lucas. He inhaled, then slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were copies of legal documents, marriage certificates, joint bank statements, and other official-looking paperwork he'd had prepared. Sophia knew some details were genuine enough. Lucas did open an account with her name on it, after all. While others had been skillfully crafted by his legal team, Rachel opened the envelope, flipping through the pages with unmasked skepticism. Silence stretched painfully until she finally set the papers down. Impressive, she mused. Yet I sense the real story remains hidden. A piece of paper can be forged. I see no wedding photos, no family testimonies, aside from your grandmother whose health is compromised. Anger flared in Lucas's eyes. Don't drag my grandmother into this. She's the reason we kept our ceremony so private, her fragile condition, and you have no right to question her word. Something darkened in Rachel's expression. I don't enjoy questioning an elderly woman. But I have a responsibility to the investors. She fixed her gaze on Sophia. Tell me, how did you two fall in love? Let's hear it in your own words. A lump formed in Sophia's throat. She desperately recalled the story they'd scripted. The pediatric charity event, shared values, the decision to wed quietly. But her voice wavered as she began. We connected over our mutual desire to help children with critical illnesses. Lucas was sponsoring a fundraiser, and I volunteered. He saw how dedicated I was, and I realized he had a generous heart beneath his business persona. Tears threatened to surface as she spoke, because while the timeline was fictional, her words about Lucas's hidden compassion felt real. She did see that side of him. She'd witnessed it with Noah, with Margaret, even with the staff he treated fairly. Rachel listened, her face a mask. You expect me to buy that? She finally asked, though her tone lacked its usual venom. Perhaps she saw a truth shining through Sophia's shaky narration. Lucas reached over, lacing his fingers through Sophia's. This isn't a performance, Rachel, he said quietly. You may not understand, but we're married because we want to be. My grandmother's illness just pushed us to make it official sooner than planned. For a moment, Rachel seemed to waver. She studied their clasped hands, a slight frown pulling at her features. If you're truly committed to each other, then you'll have no problem inviting the investors to a vow renewal of sorts. Her gaze flicked up to Lucas's eyes. A public display of affection and unity, assuming Margaret's health allows. Let the shareholders witness your devotion firsthand. Sophia's stomach flipped. This was a curveball they hadn't anticipated. A vow renewal. In front of business associates, panic churned inside her, but Lucas surprised her by giving a slow nod. If that's what it takes, he said, voice firm, we'll do it. Rachel's lips curved into a satisfied smile. Then I look forward to the invitation. She rose, leaving the envelope on the table. As her figure receded into the lounge's shadows, Sophia exhaled shakily. Lucas reached for her, leaning in to whisper, It's a big gamble, but maybe this will silence her. Sophia squeezed his hand, her mind racing. A vow renewal meant more lies, or perhaps a chance to make something genuine in the midst of so much deception. For now, they had a small glimmer of hope. If they could put on a convincing show of unity, perhaps Rachel would back off. Yet as they left the lounge, a single question echoed in Sophia's mind. Could this vow renewal be the tipping point where truth and lies finally collide? The day after their unsettling meeting with Rachel, Sophia found herself alone in Lucas's penthouse. Tidying up the living room, she was trying and failing to ignore the emotional storm brewing inside her. Rachel's suggestion of a vow renewal felt like a train hurtling toward them, unstoppable. How far could they go, piling lies upon lies, before it all imploded? Midway through fluffing a throw pillow, Sophia's phone buzzed. Seeing it was Mrs. Patterson, she braced herself. "Is Noah okay?" she asked quickly. "He's doing all right," came the older woman's reassuring voice. "Just a little restless. I think he misses you." Sophia's chest tightened. Balancing her time between Noah, Margaret, and the charade with Lucas was wearing her thin. "I'll come by soon," she promised. After hanging up, she stood in the silent penthouse, exhaustion weighing on her like a heavy cloak. Moments later, Lucas entered. His tie was crooked, and his eyes were rimmed with dark circles. "I spoke with James," he said, voice subdued. "He thinks the vow renewal could really sway the investors. He's already started drafting invitations in case we decide to proceed." Sophia lowered her gaze. "This is spiraling out of control." He raked a hand through his hair, nodding grimly. "I know, but if we don't go through with it, Rachel will interpret it as a confession of guilt, and the deal could collapse. My entire company is on the line, not to mention the resources we need for Noah." She set the pillow aside. "What about Margaret? We haven't even mentioned it to her. She's too frail to attend some big public event." Lucas sighed, sinking onto the couch. "We could make it a very small ceremony. Hospital staff, close friends, maybe the key investors and their spouses, just enough to be convincing." He hesitated. "But the real question is, can Margaret handle such an event?" Sophia tried to picture the elderly woman, fragile yet still sharp. Could a gentle, controlled ceremony give her a final burst of joy, or would it overwhelm her? "She wants to see us happy," Sophia said softly, voice trembling with emotion. "But I can't lie to her anymore, Lucas. I can't stand in front of her and recite vows that aren't real." He stared at her, his own anguish plain. "I know," he murmured. "I hate lying to her too. But if we confess, she might feel betrayed. And if the shock is too great—" He trailed off, unable to voice his deepest fear, that the stress might hasten Margaret's decline. They sat side by side on the couch, the hush of the penthouse draping over them like a mournful shroud. Sophia rested her head in her hands. "How did we get here?" she asked, her voice strained. "All we wanted was to give Margaret a bit of peace." Lucas wrapped an arm around her shoulders, a tentative gesture of comfort. "Sometimes good intentions pave the road to chaos," he said, a wry edge to his tone. "And I never expected to care about you this much." Her heart twisted at his admission. She lifted her gaze, finding his expression raw. In that moment, it felt as if the physical closeness was more genuine than any of the scripted lines they'd fed Margaret or Rachel. Slowly, almost hesitantly, she placed a hand on his cheek. "Lucas," she whispered, wanting to say something honest, something not clouded by the lies they were living. He leaned closer, eyes flickering with longing and uncertainty, as if teetering on the edge of a confession. Then, as though a sudden wave of self-consciousness struck, he broke away, clearing his throat. "We should talk to Margaret about the vow renewal," he said quietly, rising to his feet. "See if it's feasible, medically and emotionally." Sophia nodded, swallowing her own confusion. "Yes, we'll do that." She pushed aside the half-formed questions swirling in her mind. Is Lucas developing real feelings for me? Am I falling for him? Such notions threatened to burst through the seams of their arrangement. That evening, they visited Margaret at the hospital. Though she looked pale, her eyes danced with curiosity when they mentioned hosting a small vow renewal. "Oh, how lovely!" she exclaimed, her voice soft but thrilled. "I'd be honored to witness it." Lucas cast Sophia a worried glance, then addressed Margaret. "Only if you feel well enough, Grandma. We don't want to burden you." Margaret waved away his concern with a shaky hand. "Nonsense. If it's something you both want, I'll summon the energy. Love is always worth celebrating." Sophia forced a smile, despite the knot in her stomach. Margaret looked so hopeful, like a woman who might cling to this joyous event as a lifeline. How could Sophia shatter that hope with the truth? As they left Margaret's room, Lucas slipped his hand into Sophia's, a silent gesture of solidarity. They were stepping ever closer to the final test of their charade, a ceremonial reaffirmation that might either soothe Margaret's heart or break it. That might protect Lucas's business or topple it. Above all, it carried the risk of leaving Sophia and Lucas emotionally wrecked, caught between a love they hadn't planned and a lie they could no longer fully control. Sunlight filtered through the penthouse's floor-to-ceiling windows as Sophia paced the living room, cradling a bouquet of white lilies in trembling hands. Despite the warm glow streaming in, she felt a chill wrap around her. Today was the day of the vow renewal ceremony, an event that should have been a joyous celebration, but instead loomed like a high-stakes performance. The carefully selected group of guests, including key investors, would arrive soon. And Margaret, frail though she was, had insisted on attending in person. Lucas entered from the bedroom hall, adjusting the cuffs of his tailored navy suit. Their eyes met, tension and uncertainty passing between them. "How are you holding up?" he asked, voice subdued. Sophia swallowed hard. "I'm terrified," she admitted, gaze flicking to the decorations scattered around the space. Delicate floral arrangements, a modest arch of pale pink roses near the windows. In a true wedding, she might have felt butterflies of excitement. Instead, a knot of dread coiled tighter in her stomach with each passing second. Lucas offered a fleeting, gentle smile. "We'll get through this." He reached for her hands, guiding her to a nearby mirror. "Let me see you." She wore a simple ivory dress that ended just above her ankles, a nod to a wedding gown without going over the top. She'd pinned her hair back with a silver barrette. Under different circumstances, she might have glowed with happiness at playing bride, yet every reflection of herself reminded her that this was all for show. A soft knock interrupted them. James appeared in the doorway, eyes flicking between them. "Guests are starting to arrive," he informed them quietly. "Margaret's on her way up in the elevator. Dr. Hamilton accompanied her." Lucas let out a slow exhale. "Thank you, James. Could you help direct the investors to the seating area?" James nodded, offering Sophia a small smile of encouragement before slipping back into the corridor. His supportive gaze provided a measure of comfort, though it did little to quell Sophia's pounding heart. Within minutes, the penthouse filled with subdued chatter. The living room furniture had been rearranged to accommodate a small aisle lined with petals. At the end of that aisle stood the simple floral arch. Investors, accompanied by a handful of executives, mingled politely. Sophia recognized some from Lucas's business dinners and forced a pleasant smile, wary of Rachel Collins's watchful eyes. Sure enough, Rachel stood near the windows, sipping champagne. She wore a sleek black dress and an air of sharp-edged curiosity. When her gaze settled on Sophia, the corner of her mouth curved in something almost like a dare. Before Sophia could steel herself to approach, the elevator doors opened. A hush fell across the room as Margaret emerged, supported by Dr. Hamilton, who guided her wheelchair over the marble floor. She wore a soft lavender shawl around her shoulders, her eyes bright with anticipation. Despite the oxygen tube clipped gently behind her ears, she exuded a determined grace that pulled Sophia's heartstrings. "Grandma," Lucas murmured, crossing the room to greet her. He bent to kiss her cheek, his expression a mixture of relief and worry. "Thank you for coming." Margaret patted his hand. "I wouldn't miss this for the world," she whispered, voice quivering with emotion. Then her gaze found Sophia, and her thin face lit up. "My dear, you look radiant," she declared. "I'm so pleased to see you two reaffirming your commitment." Sophia felt tears prick the corners of her eyes. She carefully lowered herself beside Margaret's chair and clasped the older woman's hand. "I'm sorry," she wanted to say, regret lancing her heart. But instead she managed a shaky smile. "I'm glad you could be here." A makeshift officiant, a longtime Reed family friend, stepped into place at the floral arch. Lucas and Sophia took their positions at the front, turning to face the small gathering of onlookers. Sophia's pulse thundered in her ears. She glanced around to see Rachel, arms folded, eyes gleaming with skeptical fascination. The officiant began with a warm welcome, acknowledging Margaret's presence and thanking the guests for witnessing this special reaffirmation of love. Sophia's throat tightened at those words. Love. She tried not to look at Margaret for fear of dissolving into guilt-ridden tears. Then came the moment for vows. Lucas inhaled, slipping a simple silver band onto Sophia's finger. His voice trembled at first, though he attempted a confident tone. "I stand here to promise my devotion," he said, each word distinct, "to honor what we've built and to protect the bond we share." His gaze flicked to the audience, as if to assert the ceremony's legitimacy. Yet when he looked at Sophia, an unmistakable sincerity glimmered in his eyes. Sophia's lips parted, a swirl of emotion tightening her chest. She held his hand, slipping a matching band onto his finger. "I vow to stand with you," she managed, her voice catching, "to trust in the quiet strength you've shown me and to cherish the time we have together." She heard a faint sniffle from the guests, possibly from one of the investors' spouses, or maybe even from James. The room bristled with an odd blend of sentimentality and suspicion. Rachel, for her part, leaned forward slightly, every muscle poised as though awaiting a moment of weakness. At the officiant's gentle prompt, Lucas and Sophia shared a brief kiss. The guests applauded politely. Margaret's eyes shone with tears, whether of joy or exhaustion, Sophia couldn't tell. Meanwhile, Rachel broke into measured clapping, her expression unreadable. As the ceremony concluded, a wave of relief and heartbreak washed over Sophia. Margaret beamed up at them from her wheelchair, a hopeful spark illuminating her face. "She believes it," Sophia realized. "She thinks we're truly in love." And for a fleeting moment, despite the falsehood underscoring it all, Sophia wished it could be real. Yet her gaze strayed to Rachel, whose calculating stare suggested that this vow renewal might have soothed some doubts. But not all. And in that silent exchange, Sophia felt an unsettling truth. Their supreme ordeal was only beginning, for the greatest conflict, the battle for honesty, still loomed ahead. The morning after the vow renewal felt like the aftermath of a high-stakes performance. Sophia woke early, stepping out of her small bedroom with a slight headache from emotional exhaustion. The penthouse was quiet. Lucas had risen even earlier, leaving to attend an emergency meeting about the merger. She stood by the large windows overlooking Manhattan, replaying the ceremony in her mind. Part of her felt a dull ache of regret. The look of pure joy on Margaret's face haunted her, as did the uncertain glint in Rachel's eyes. "What have we done?" she wondered. "We only made the lie bigger." Her phone buzzed. Glancing at the screen, she saw a message from James. "Grandma Margaret resting well. Dr. Hamilton says her vitals are stable this morning. Lucas asked me to check on you too. Everything all right?" Sophia's heart warmed slightly. "He's worried about me." Typing quickly, she reassured James she was fine, then set her phone aside. The vow renewal had caused quite a stir. By evening, various industry blogs were already posting tidbits, photos of her and Lucas under the floral arch, short videos from guests snapping footage on discreet phones. The narrative was that Lucas Reed, elusive billionaire, had reaffirmed his commitment to his previously unknown wife in an intimate ceremony. Public curiosity was piqued, but for the moment, the coverage remained mostly positive, or at least neutral. Still, worry gnawed at Sophia. She decided to visit Margaret again. Perhaps seeing her would remind Sophia why she'd gone through with this deception in the first place. Within the hour, she arrived at the private hospital room. Margaret was awake, propped on pillows, sipping tea. The older woman's face lit up at the sight of Sophia. "My dear," Margaret greeted, extending a trembling hand. "I've been thinking about last night. It was so moving. Thank you for letting me witness it." Sophia swallowed, guilt tangling in her throat. "We're glad you could be there," she said softly. "How are you feeling?" Margaret patted Sophia's hand. "A bit weary, but so happy. You and Lucas looked so lovely together." She paused, gathering her breath. "I'm proud of how you've stood by him. He's always been so guarded, but I see a different light in his eyes now." Sophia blinked away tears. Overwhelmed by Margaret's genuine faith, she couldn't bear to reveal the truth. This woman, so gentle and affectionate, deserved every ounce of comfort. "I just want to do what's best," Sophia whispered, her words catching in her throat. Margaret nodded knowingly, a faint sadness crossing her expression. "Sometimes, doing what's best involves more pain than we expect," she said quietly. "But if it leads to love, it's worth it. Promise me you'll hold on to that thought, even when life gets complicated." Those words struck Sophia deeply, as though Margaret sensed the undercurrent of turmoil. Sophia offered a wavering smile in return, struggling to reconcile her mounting guilt with the kindness before her. On her way out, she bumped into Dr. Hamilton in the hallway. He gave her a polite nod. "She's asked about Lucas too, you know. Hopes he'll come by soon." "He's in meetings," Sophia explained, "but he'll visit as soon as he can." Dr. Hamilton peered at her with mild concern. "And how are you doing, Mrs. Reed?" "This can't be easy," Sophia forced a gentle laugh. "It's certainly not what I expected, but I'm managing." When she returned to the penthouse, Lucas had just walked in, tie askew, lines of worry etched on his brow. He glanced at Sophia. The investors seemed pleased enough by the ceremony. Some even sent congratulatory notes this morning. But Rachel remains unconvinced. She claims we need further public appearances to fully secure her endorsement. Sophia's shoulders sagged. "More performances. We can't keep doing this indefinitely." He nodded, exhaustion evident in his voice. "I know, but she's set on holding a formal dinner with the entire board to celebrate our renewed commitments. It's like she wants to pick us apart in front of everyone." He paused, gaze flickering. "How's Margaret?" "She's stable. She's so happy." Sophia sank onto the couch, a tremor in her voice. "Lucas, I feel awful lying to her. She believes this is real, that we're truly in love." He settled beside her, resting a hand on her shoulder. "I hate it too, but at least she's comforted. That's what matters, right?" Sophia gazed at him, tears hovering on her lashes. "And what about us? Where does that leave us when all this is over?" The question hung in the air. Lucas looked stricken, as if he'd been grappling with it in private. After a moment, he spoke softly. "I don't know. Part of me wishes maybe we could make this real, but it's complicated, and we started from a lie." Her heart thudded. She wanted to believe that a genuine bond was growing between them, something untainted by their initial deception. Yet she feared the day they'd have to reveal the truth, risking heartbreak for Margaret and potential collapse of Lucas's empire. Their conversation was interrupted by a call from James, asking Lucas to attend an urgent meeting downtown. Lucas pressed a light kiss to Sophia's forehead, an instinctive gesture that left her breathless with confusion, then hurried away. Alone again, she stood by the window, gazing out over the bustling city below. Margaret's gentle advice echoed in her mind. Sometimes, doing what's best involves more pain than we expect. Sophia wondered if she'd be able to pay that price, and if, in the end, it might still be worth it. 2 days later, A hush cloaked the penthouse. It was late afternoon, and Lucas had retreated to his office, wrestling with merger documents. Sophia, in search of a moment's peace, stepped out onto the balcony. A brisk autumn wind stirred the city air, carrying the muffled roar of traffic far below. She hugged her cardigan tighter and gazed across Manhattan, recalling the anxious woman she'd been when this charade began. Back then, she was a desperate mother, compelled by a need for survival. Even entering a faux marriage was a sacrifice she'd do for Noah's sake. But now, standing there, she felt a flicker of strength that surprised her. I've changed, she realized. I've grown more assertive, less afraid to face the world's judgments. The balcony door slid open behind her. Lucas emerged, features taut with concern. "I've been looking for you," he said softly. "I thought you might have gone to see Margaret." Sophia shook her head, turning to face him. "I needed a breather. James said Margaret's resting well, so I decided to wait until tomorrow." Lucas joined her at the railing, both of them watching the endless swirl of city life. After a moment, he spoke quietly. "I've been thinking about the vow renewal." He cleared his throat. "I know it was staged, but it affected me. Standing there, saying those words in front of Margaret, in front of everyone. It felt more real than I anticipated." Her heart skipped. She studied his profile, sharp jaw, furrowed brow. "It felt real to me, too," she admitted, voice trembling. "Which is terrifying, because I can't forget how we got here." He closed his eyes briefly. "I never meant to hurt anyone. I just wanted Margaret to be happy. And then I saw a chance to help you and Noah." He sighed. "I didn't realize we'd end up here, entangled in feelings neither of us planned." Sophia's cheeks warmed. She hesitated before placing a gentle hand on his arm. "Sometimes, the most unexpected moments lead us to the greatest truths. But it doesn't erase the deception." He turned to face her fully, searching her eyes. "We can't stay in limbo forever. A time will come when we must tell Margaret the truth or let her pass on believing this lie. And I need to decide how to salvage my business without dragging you into a scandal." The notion made her stomach twist. She stepped closer, voice low. "Whatever happens, I want to face it with honesty, even if it means risking all we've built." Lucas's gaze flickered with pain and yearning. "Sophia," he whispered, lifting a hand to cup her cheek. Before he could continue, the shrill ring of his phone shattered the intimacy. He grimaced, pulling away to answer. "Yes, Rachel," he said, tension returning to his posture. "All right, I'll be there." After ending the call, he exhaled. "She wants a dinner meeting tonight, just the two of us, says it's crucial for finalizing some clauses in the merger." Sophia nodded, a pang of jealousy and worry mingling. "Be careful." He offered a wry smile. "I'm not sure it's me who needs caution. She's relentless." She forced a small laugh, though her chest felt tight. "Call me if you need anything." Once Lucas left, the penthouse felt cavernous. Sophia wandered through the rooms, reflecting on how her perspective had shifted since the first day she set foot here. Once merely an employee, she now had the keys to his deepest vulnerability, and vice versa. With each passing day, the lines between duty and devotion blurred. She felt more alive, more resolute, and yet a deep sense of unease lurked around every corner, reminding her that this newfound self-assurance was built on fragile ground. That evening, she cooked a simple dinner for herself. While stirring the soup, her mind drifted to memories. The hush of the vow renewal, Margaret's beaming smile, Lucas's whispered words. She found herself longing for a time when all of this could exist without pretense. Her phone buzzed, startling her. Noah's text lit up the screen. "Hi, Mom. Feeling better tonight? Miss you." A wave of love swept through her. She typed a quick reply, promising to visit him first thing tomorrow. As she hit send, she recalled how integral he'd been to every choice she'd made. Even if the deception had become tangled with other emotions, it remained grounded in her determination to secure a better life for her son. She carried her bowl to the living room, curling up on the couch to eat in silence. A fresh breeze whispered through the slightly open window. Sophia stared at the flickering city lights, feeling something solidify inside her. Transformation. She was no longer just a mother in crisis, nor just a housekeeper. She was a woman who had found courage amid a storm. And though the final test still loomed, she sensed that whatever outcome awaited her, she would face it with a newfound sense of identity and resolve. The next morning, Sophia rose early, determined to check on both Margaret at the hospital and Noah in Mrs. Patterson's care. She left Lucas a brief note, visiting Margaret and Noah, "See you this afternoon," before slipping out into the crisp autumn air. Grey clouds clustered overhead, hinting at possible rain. She arrived at the children's clinic first, where Noah was undergoing a routine test. Spotting him in the waiting area, she rushed forward, scooping him into a careful hug. "How are you feeling, sweet boy?" He grinned, though his complexion was pale. "A bit tired, Mom. But Dr. Thompson says I'm doing better than a month ago." Sophia exhaled a sigh of relief. Every bit of good news felt like a life raft. "Lucas has arranged for some specialists," she said softly, though she felt a pang at his name. Would their arrangement come crashing down before these treatments could fully help Noah? Noah brightened. "Yeah, I heard. Thanks, Mom. And I saw pictures of your vow renewal on the internet." "Are you and Lucas really married?" he asked it innocently, yet the question struck Sophia's heart. "We care about each other," she offered, battling the guilt that swelled inside. "Lucas is helping me take care of you, so don't worry about anything." He nodded, satisfied for the moment. She ruffled his hair, steeling herself before she said goodbye, reminding him and Mrs. Patterson she'd return later. Then she headed to the private hospital wing where Margaret resided. Margaret looked particularly fragile today, her breathing labored, yet her smile beamed when she spotted Sophia. "My girl," she croaked. "Come, sit, tell me, is Lucas too busy to visit?" Sophia perched on a chair by the bed, gently stroking Margaret's cool hand. "He's swamped with meetings, but he'll be here soon. How are you holding up?" Margaret coughed, wincing as she did so. "I'm all right," she lied. "Just tired. That ceremony the other night, oh, I still feel the warmth of it." Her eyes sparkled. "It was the happiest I've been in years." Sophia's guilt churned anew. She deserves truth, yet it might break her. She forced a trembling smile. "I'm glad you enjoyed it. You've been our inspiration." Margaret's eyelids fluttered. "Take care of him, will you? He's stubborn, but deep down, he's that little boy I once knew, full of wonder. And promise me, dear, you'll let yourself be happy too, whatever happens." Sophia nodded, biting her lip to keep tears at bay. "I promise. I'll do my best." Back at the penthouse, she found Lucas pacing near the windows, phone clutched in his hand. He looked up as she entered, tension etched in his face. "Rachel's forcing a final vote among the board tomorrow," he said. "She claims it'll either seal the merger or destroy it." Sophia set her purse down, walking over. "A final vote, so soon?" He let out a shaky breath. "Yes, she's pushing for a decisive conclusion. If the majority backs me, we finalize the merger. If not, everything collapses, and I become the subject of scrutiny." She's been hinting that any sign of personal instability could tip the scales. Sophia absorbed the news, panic swirling in her mind. "What do we do?" Lucas's gaze darkened. "We need to present ourselves at that board meeting. Show absolute unity, no cracks." He hesitated, running a hand over his jaw. "If they see any reason to doubt us, any sign we're not who we claim to be, Rachel will seize on it." Despite her fear, Sophia lifted her chin. "Then we'll face them head-on. I'm not backing down now." A flash of gratitude and something deeper crossed Lucas's expression. He stepped closer, resting a hand on her shoulder. "We stand together." That evening, James came by to strategize. They spent hours reviewing possible questions the board might ask, not just about finances, but personal stability and public image. Sophia tried to memorize every detail about Lucas's life story, weaving it seamlessly with her own. She felt like a student cramming for final exams, except the outcome here would affect more than just a grade. Late into the night, she stood in the penthouse's vast living room, scanning notes while Lucas tidied the dining table strewn with paperwork. Rain tapped against the windows, mirroring the growing unease inside her. At some point, Lucas paused behind her, gently resting a hand on her back. "We've come so far," he murmured. "I don't want to lose everything now." She turned, meeting his gaze. "Tomorrow might be our last chance. After that, we decide what comes next." Their shared breath in that silent moment spoke volumes. Both were bracing for the final showdown, a merger vote that would test not just Lucas's empire, but the fragile web of trust, affection, and deception they had spun. Win or lose, the truth would come calling soon, and neither was fully certain how they'd survive the aftermath. The day of the board vote dawned overcast, the city's skyline swathed in a dull gray. Sophia dressed carefully in a fitted charcoal blazer, wanting to project composure even though her heart pounded with dread. Lucas opted for a classic black suit, the crisp lines mirroring his tightly reined emotions. They exchanged a tense nod before heading downstairs to the waiting town car. During the ride, they sat in strained silence, fingers occasionally brushing against each other in a silent bid for reassurance. When they arrived at the imposing glass and steel corporate building, James greeted them in the lobby, expression grave. He led them to the executive conference room, where the board members had gathered around a long, polished table. Rachel Collins was already there, standing at the head of the room as though presiding over a trial. Her gaze immediately latched onto Lucas and Sophia, cool and assessing. She rapped a pen against the tabletop, calling for attention. "Let's begin," she said, voice slicing through the hush. The meeting opened with formalities, financial reports, an overview of the merger's projected gains. Lucas spoke succinctly about potential growth, synergy, and brand expansion. However, Sophia could see tension lines bracketing his mouth. His usual confidence wavered. Meanwhile, she sat quietly at his side, nerves thrumming. Halfway through, Rachel fixed her attention on them. "All these numbers are promising, Mr. Reed," she said, "but certain board members remain uneasy about personal matters. We've seen your vow renewal, heard your claims of a private marriage, yet concerns linger about your stability. Care to comment?" Lucas's jaw tightened. "My personal life is hardly a reason to question this merger's viability. My track record speaks for itself." Rachel's thin smile reappeared. "In many cases, yes, but image and perception matter. If there's even a suggestion that your marriage is a sham, it reflects on your integrity. I'd like to open the floor to the board. Does anyone wish to raise questions for Mr. and Mrs. Reed?" A ripple of murmurs passed among the seated executives. Then one man cleared his throat. "Could you elaborate on your decision to keep your relationship so secret initially? It's unorthodox for someone in your position." Lucas's eyes flicked to Sophia before he spoke. "I value privacy. My grandmother was ill, and we chose an intimate approach. Sophia and I connected over shared values, not publicity." Next, a woman in a tailored suit leaned forward. "Mrs. Reed, Can you confirm when you first met Mr. Reed? We've heard conflicting timelines. Sophia's pulse skittered, but she mustered her composure. 2 years ago at a pediatric charity event, she said, reciting their rehearsed story. We kept things quiet out of respect for Lucas's family situation. The board members seemed to consider her words. Some nodded, intrigued. Others exchanged knowing glances. Rachel, though, remained unnervingly still. Then, to everyone's surprise, Rachel held up a folder. I have documents suggesting Mrs. Reed was employed as a housekeeper in Mr. Reed's penthouse, overlapping the date she claims they were already seeing each other. Care to explain that discrepancy? Sophia's heart lurched. A hush fell over the room. Her eyes darted to Lucas, whose face had gone pale. If they denied it, the board would view them as liars. If they admitted it, how would they justify hiding that fact? Gathering a breath, Lucas rose slowly. Yes, Sophia was working in my home at the time. We had complicated circumstances. Our relationship evolved. He glanced at Sophia, an apology burning in his gaze. It began as an employer-employee dynamic, but as we got to know each other, it changed. Rachel's lips curved in triumph, as though she'd sniffed out a weakness. So you deceived everyone, including your grandmother, about how you truly met. That alone raises concerns about your honesty. The tension in the room built to a fever pitch. Sophia felt sweat bead along her spine. She spotted James near the back, jaw clenched, ready to jump to Lucas's defense if needed. Finally, something snapped inside Sophia. She stood, her voice trembling but resolute. We were private, yes, but we're not deceiving anyone about our commitment. Love can start in unexpected ways. She locked eyes with Rachel. If you want to condemn us for that, so be it. But it doesn't change the fact that Lucas has led this company with integrity. A wave of murmurs swept through the board. Rachel tapped her pen again. That remains to be seen. Let's hold the official vote. Those in favor of finalizing the merger. Hands rose tentatively at first, then with growing confidence. Sophia counted them. 6, 7, 8. A majority. Relief flooded her veins, though it warred with lingering fear about Rachel's next move. Rachel pursed her lips, turning to the secretary. Record the vote. The motion passes. She then shot Lucas a glare. Don't think this means you're off the hook. Any scandal that surfaces will still reflect on you. But for now, the board moves forward. Lucas exhaled, shoulders trembling with barely contained relief. Thank you, he said hoarsely, addressing the board. Then he reached for Sophia's hand, gripping it like a lifeline. The meeting adjourned, and the room began to empty, but as Rachel stalked past them, she paused, murmuring in a low voice, "This isn't over. If I catch one whiff of dishonesty..." Lucas's tone was icier than Sophia had ever heard. You have what you wanted, Rachel, a successful merger. Now leave my family alone. With a disdainful shrug, Rachel swept out. Sophia slumped into a chair, heart hammering. The final confrontation had ended in a narrow victory for Lucas's company. Yet the moral cost of their deception weighed heavier than ever. She sensed that while they'd won the boardroom, the deeper challenge, revealing the truth to Margaret and deciding what to do about their own entwined lives, still lay ahead. In that moment, Lucas slid a hand across her cheek, gratitude and worry mingling in his eyes. We survived, he whispered, voice thick with emotion. But at what price? Sophia closed her eyes, clutching his hand against her face. It was a question neither of them could answer, at least not yet. Sunlight poured through the penthouse windows, illuminating the space where Lucas and Sophia sat quietly at the dining table. Only days had passed since the tense board vote that saved Lucas's merger, yet it felt as though entire months of worry had lifted. Partially, Rachel Collins' threats still hovered, but for now the business seemed secure. And in the hush that followed the storm, both Lucas and Sophia found themselves in a fragile moment of reflection. Sophia's eyes trailed over the stack of papers before them. Some were final documents from the merger, others were hospital updates about Margaret's condition. "It's strange," she murmured. "The very crisis that brought us together and nearly tore us apart is over, at least on the surface." Lucas nodded, gazing out at Manhattan's skyline. "I used to think winning this merger was my life's purpose. Now it feels almost hollow compared to what we've been through." He reached across the table for her hand. "I'm glad you stayed." Her heart squeezed at his earnest tone. She offered a gentle smile. "Me too. But we can't pretend everything is settled. Rachel may stay quiet for now, but if she digs any deeper—" She let the words trail off, the threat unspoken yet palpable. A cloud drifted past the windows, dimming the light. Sophia rose and gathered her purse. "I'm going to check on Margaret," she said, her voice tightening at the thought of the older woman's fragility. "I want to be with her as much as possible." Lucas stood as well, walking her to the door. "Tell her I'll come by tonight," he murmured. As she stepped into the hallway, he gently touched her elbow. "Sophia?" She turned. His expression was unguarded, revealing a swirl of longing and gratitude. "Be careful," was all he managed, but the affection in his eyes said more than words could convey. Margaret's hospital room. Sophia found Margaret propped up on pillows, gazing at a bright autumn sky through the window. The older woman smiled when she saw Sophia. Despite her evident weakness, pale skin and trembling hands, her eyes remained clear and kind. "My dear," she whispered, motioning for Sophia to come closer. "Sit with me. I've been thinking about life, about the choices we make." A soft cough interrupted her, and Sophia quickly offered her a glass of water. After sipping carefully, Margaret continued. "Lucas told me the merger was approved. You must be relieved." Sophia nodded. "Yes, it means we can keep helping Noah with the best treatments, and it gave Lucas peace of mind, at least on the business side." Margaret's lips curved in a gentle smile. "He's always been a determined soul, chasing success. I'm glad he has you to remind him of what truly matters. Money won't fill an empty heart." The words struck home. Sophia realized that beneath the myriad deceptions, an undeniable shift had happened within Lucas and within herself. She wasn't just a mother desperate for funds anymore. She'd become a partner of sorts, standing beside him through crisis after crisis. Margaret patted Sophia's hand. "I'm not blind, my dear. I see how you look at each other. There's care, there's affection." Her gaze sharpened, a hint of her old vigor flashing through. "If there's any secret standing between you and Lucas, I won't judge you, but life is short, shorter than we imagine. Find your truth and hold it close." A pang of guilt stirred in Sophia's chest. She wanted to confess everything, to beg Margaret's forgiveness for the pretense. But the raw fear of shattering this precious peace stilled her tongue. Instead, she nodded, tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. "I'll remember your words," she whispered, voice breaking. Margaret sank back against the pillows, closing her eyes for a moment. "Good," she murmured, her breaths labored but calm. "I want that promise from you. And tell Lucas, I'm proud of him. Always have been, always will be." Sophia watched her drift into a light sleep, chest tight with conflicting emotions. She recognized that a kind of renewal was happening, not just in the business sense, but in her and Lucas's perspective on what truly mattered. Margaret was at peace, content to see them together, even if some part of her suspected the layers of truth beneath the surface. Back at the penthouse, that evening, Lucas returned from the hospital. He found Sophia in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for a light soup. The domesticity of the scene warmed him, reminding him how much had changed since the day he first made that audacious proposal to her. "How is she?" he asked quietly, removing his coat. Sophia set down the knife. "She's tired, but she seemed reflective." She studied his face, noticing lines of worry. "Lucas," she spoke about secrets. "I think she knows we're hiding something, even if she doesn't fully understand." He stepped closer, sliding a hand around her waist. "I've had the same feeling. She's sharper than we give her credit for. Sometimes I think she's waiting for us to tell her." Silence fell as they stared at each other. In that stillness, they both felt the tension of a fragile peace, one that could be shattered by a single revelation. Yet the bond they had forged through adversity now felt stronger than ever. Even if they stood on uncertain ground, they stood there together. At last, Sophia managed a small nod. "We'll figure this out," she murmured, "for her sake and ours." Outside, twilight dimmed the city's towering structures, casting soft shadows across the penthouse. Inside, Lucas and Sophia shared a quiet meal, acutely aware that they were entering a new phase, vulnerable, yet renewed by the realization that genuine connection might exist beyond the original lie. All that remained was to confront the truth that bound them, before it slipped beyond their grasp forever. A week later, Sophia found herself standing in the foyer of the old summer house upstate, the same one she and Lucas had visited to fulfill Margaret's request. This time, though, Margaret wasn't merely requesting an inspection, she was there in person. Against all odds, Dr. Hamilton had approved a short trip, provided she stayed in a wheelchair and avoided undue stress. The air felt lighter than it had in months, crisp autumn leaves swirling across the driveway as Lucas helped the medical staff lift Margaret gently over the threshold. Sophia followed close behind, guiding Noah by the hand. He'd been allowed to come for the day, as his recent checkups showed improvement. Margaret gazed around the foyer, her eyes misty with nostalgia. "Oh, how I've missed this place," she whispered, inhaling the scent of aged wood. "It's like coming home after a long journey." Lucas smiled softly, pushing her wheelchair forward. "It wouldn't be the same without you here," he murmured, guiding her down the hallway. They emerged into the living room, where sunlight poured through tall windows onto a cozy cluster of chairs and a warm fire crackling in the ancient stone fireplace. Noah bounded in, curiosity shining in his eyes as he took in the quaint furniture and rustic charm. "This is so cool," he exclaimed, peeking under old lace doilies on the end tables. Sophia's heart lifted at the sight of him so energized. Perhaps all these trials are yielding some real hope for us all. Margaret chuckled at Noah's enthusiasm. "I used to watch Lucas run around here as a boy, collecting caterpillars, chasing birds. He found such joy in every corner of these walls." She turned to Sophia, eyes glinting. "And you, my dear, do you like it?" Sophia nodded, warmth flooding her. "I love it. It feels like a place where real memories are made." They spent the afternoon reminiscing by the fireplace. Margaret recounted stories of Lucas's childhood antics, sneaking cookies from the pantry, hosting imaginary tea parties with her in the garden. Lucas blushed, tossing amused, self-conscious glances at Sophia. Even Noah chimed in with stories of his own adventures in the city. The conversation felt strikingly genuine, as if for a brief moment the burden of deception had melted away. At some point, Margaret dozed off, lulled by the crackling fire. The medical staff wheeled her into a downstairs bedroom to rest. In her absence, the four of them, Lucas, Sophia, Noah, and James, who had accompanied them to handle logistics, lingered in the living room. James eventually took a call, stepping outside, leaving Lucas, Sophia, and Noah alone. While Noah played with a small puzzle he'd found on the coffee table, Lucas beckoned Sophia to the window overlooking the lake. The autumn colors mirrored in the water created a scene of stunning tranquility. "I wish we could stay here forever," Sophia confessed, her breath fogging the glass. "Away from the pressure and pretending. It's so peaceful." Lucas's expression softened. "You don't have to pretend around me anymore," he said quietly. "I know everything started under false pretenses, but it doesn't feel false now." He paused, eyes flicking to Noah in the background. "I care about you." "About Noah? I don't want this to end just because the original arrangement is complete." Her heart pounded at his admission. In the hush of the summer house, it felt more profound, more real. "I care about you too, Lucas," she replied, turning to face him. "But I can't keep lying to Margaret. She deserves the truth." He ran a hand through his hair, anguish crossing his features. "I know. Part of me fears the impact it'll have on her, but another part knows we can't keep her in the dark, especially if we're to move forward honestly." They heard Noah giggling behind them and turned to see him holding a dusty board game triumphantly. Sophia's chest tightened with affection. She rested a hand on Lucas's shoulder. "If we want a genuine future, we have to come clean, to her, to ourselves." Lucas nodded, drawing her into a gentle hug. "I'll stand by you, whatever the outcome, as long as it means we can be real." In that embrace, Sophia felt a sense of homecoming, like the house itself was welcoming them, supporting the fragile bond they had forged. She glanced around the warm living room, remembering how uncertain and desperate she'd been when she first arrived. Now, she felt unexpectedly strong, ready to face the repercussions of their deception if it meant finally living without the weight of it. A few hours later, Margaret woke and insisted on sitting by the lake. Dr. Hamilton and James arranged a blanket and chair for her by the pier. Lucas took over, pushing her wheelchair along a narrow path. Sophia and Noah trailed behind, watching as the older woman smiled at the sunset's reflection on the water. "It's perfect," Margaret breathed, voice trembling. I wish all of us could be here always." She cast a tender look at Lucas and Sophia. "I'd like to think I'll leave this world knowing my grandson is loved." Sophia's hand found Lucas's. Tears welled, and she fought the urge to drop to her knees and beg forgiveness for the half-truths. Yet something in Margaret's gaze said she already understood. For the moment, they simply stood together in silence, letting the fading daylight cocoon them in gentle acceptance. A homecoming of the heart, if not yet a full revelation of truth, but one that promised a path forward, fraught with difficulty, yet illuminated by the possibility of real love. A crisp autumn breeze drifted through the hospital garden, where Margaret rested in a wheelchair, swaddled in a warm blanket. Weeks had passed since her trip upstate, and while the excursion brightened her spirits, her energy had waned noticeably upon returning. Despite her frailty, she insisted on sitting outside whenever possible, claiming the fresh air helped her think. Today, a small gathering filled the garden. Sophia stood by Margaret's side, Lucas close behind, and Noah perched on a bench, delighted to see squirrels darting among the hedges. James and Dr. Hamilton lingered nearby, maintaining a respectful distance. The group's mood was subdued, yet comforting, bound by the sense that these were precious moments. Margaret inhaled slowly. "Sometimes this garden feels like a little world unto itself," she remarked softly, eyes sweeping over the rows of chrysanthemums. "I imagine you all here, even when I'm gone, laughing, sharing stories, helping each other." Sophia bent to tuck the blanket tighter around Margaret's legs. "We'll keep your memory alive, Margaret," she promised, heart twisting at the finality in the older woman's tone. "You've given us so much," Margaret patted Sophia's hand, "and you, my dear, have given me more than you realize." Her gaze flicked pointedly to Lucas, who seemed unsure whether to step forward or remain behind. After a moment's hesitation, he inched closer, resting a gentle hand on Sophia's shoulder. Dr. Hamilton cleared his throat. "Margaret, don't tire yourself out. Shall we head back in soon?" She nodded, but not before lifting her chin toward Lucas and Sophia. "Just one more minute." The doctor gave a knowing smile and stepped back, signaling to James to follow. Once they were relatively alone, Margaret looked at Lucas, then Sophia. Her frail voice caught in the breeze. "I've watched you both change. Lucas, I see in you a gentleness you used to hide, and Sophia, I see a strength you might not have recognized before." She paused for breath, her eyes glistening. "It makes me happy, happier than I can express. But I need to know something." Lucas swallowed hard, leaning in. "Anything, Grandma?" Margaret's gaze shifted between them. "Are you two truly at peace with the future you're building?" A flurry of emotions churned in Sophia's chest. Love, guilt, devotion, fear. She glanced at Lucas, who wore the same conflicted look. They'd spoken about telling Margaret the truth, yet time and again they'd hesitated, terrified of causing her anguish. Now she was asking them directly if their foundation was solid. "We want to be," Lucas replied hoarsely, his eyes misting. "It's complicated, but yes, we want a real future." Margaret exhaled, her face etched with both relief and understanding. "That's all I needed to hear." She reached out, fragile fingers curling around their hands, drawing them closer. "Your love, whatever form it's taken, should be built on honesty. If there's something left unsaid, don't let it poison what you've worked so hard to grow." Tears blurred Sophia's vision. She knows. Something in Margaret's words rang with quiet acceptance, as though the older woman sensed their secret, but had chosen not to condemn them. "I promise," Sophia whispered. "We'll make things right." Margaret's breath hitched, and for a moment, she closed her eyes against a wave of exhaustion. Lucas and Sophia helped guide her wheelchair back inside, where Dr. Hamilton directed them to her room. Once she was settled, she waved them off, insisting she just needed a nap. But before they left, Margaret caught Sophia's wrist, whispering words that sent shivers along her spine. "Hold on to truth, my dear, don't fear it. It's the only thing that sets us free." Later that day, Noah returned to Mrs. Patterson's apartment to rest. Lucas, Sophia, and James found themselves in the hospital cafeteria, the hum of conversation mingling with the scent of disinfectant and vending machine coffee. They spoke in hushed tones. "You've both come a long way," James observed, arms crossed. "I remember how shaky things were when this began. Now you look like a real couple." Lucas rubbed a hand across the back of his neck. "That's because it is real, at least to me. It's just overshadowed by our initial lie." Sophia felt a jolt of recognition. "And the longer we wait to tell Margaret, the heavier it weighs." James nodded thoughtfully. "You might not have much time to do it. She's weaker every day. If you truly want to honor her, maybe it's best if she knows the whole story, even if it hurts." A pang of dread flared in Sophia's gut. She could still picture Margaret's hopeful eyes, the trust that glowed whenever they were together. Would telling the truth break her heart beyond repair, or would it grant her final peace, knowing that love still blossomed in its own way? They deliberated until the cafeteria's chatter faded into background noise. In the end, they reached an agreement. Honesty had become inevitable. If Margaret already suspected, maybe she deserved a chance to address it openly. Still, Sophia quivered at the thought of how to begin such a conversation. "I'm sorry we deceived you, but we love you, we love each other." It was a paradox that threatened to unravel the fragile tapestry they'd woven. That night, as Lucas drove them home, Sophia stared out at the passing city lights. She felt the weight of Margaret's parting words. If there's something left unsaid, don't let it poison what you've built. Beneath the swirling anxieties, hope glimmered. Margaret had gifted them with a final piece of wisdom. Love born from lies could still find redemption in truth if they were brave enough to face it. Late evening light cast soft shadows along the walls of Margaret's hospital room. She lay propped against pillows, her eyes closed in gentle repose. Lucas and Sophia stood at her bedside, hands entwined, hearts hammering with the weight of what they were about to do. Doctor. Hamilton had informed them Margaret's condition had deteriorated. This might be their last chance to share the truth. James waited discreetly in the hallway, ready to offer support if needed. Margaret stirred, eyelids fluttering open. She took a shallow breath, noticing them at once. "Lucas, Sophia," she whispered, voice raspy but warm. "You're here." Lucas squeezed Sophia's hand, then sank into a chair by the bed. "Grandma, there's something we need to tell you." "Something we should have said a long time ago." Margaret studied his face, then Sophia's. A gentle sadness crept into her features. "You've been keeping a secret," she murmured, not accusing, but resigned. "I've known there was more to your story." Tears welled in Sophia's eyes as she sat on the edge of the bed, carefully clasping Margaret's frail hand. "Yes, we never wanted to hurt you. We started this arrangement for your sake. Lucas wanted you to believe he was happily married, so you could find peace." Emotion clogged her throat. "I was just his housekeeper, Margaret. He paid me to pretend—" Margaret closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her wrinkled cheek. For a moment, Sophia feared the shock would be too great. But then Margaret exhaled softly and opened her eyes again. "My dear," she said, voice quivering, "I suspected something along these lines. No real couple is that guarded about their story without reason." Lucas leaned forward, tears swimming in his own gaze. "I'm so sorry, Grandma. I betrayed your trust. I thought I was protecting you from disappointment, but I see now it was cowardly. Everything we did, the vow renewal, the charades, was a lie at first." A hush blanketed the room, broken only by the soft beep of the medical monitors. Margaret's chest rose and fell with effort, but her gaze remained clear as she looked from Lucas to Sophia. "And now," she whispered. Sophia felt the words tumble from her heart. "Now it's not a lie. At least not for me. I'm in love with your grandson, and I don't know if you can ever forgive us for how it started." Margaret's tears multiplied, but she squeezed Sophia's hand with surprising strength. "Love that comes unexpectedly can still be true," she said, voice thin yet resolute, "even if it grew from an imperfect beginning." Lucas lowered his head, overcome by emotion. "I wish I'd done it all differently. I hate that we deceived you. But yes, I love her. And we wanted you to know before it was too late." Margaret breathed a shaky laugh that melted into a sob. "Oh, my darlings." She beckoned them closer, brushing their joined hands with her trembling fingertips. "The greatest truth is the love you share now. Don't let shame overshadow it. I forgive you both. I only want you to be happy, genuinely happy." Relief and sorrow collided within Sophia, tears spilling over. She leaned forward, resting her forehead gently on Margaret's shoulder. Lucas did the same, enveloping the older woman in a careful embrace. In that quiet moment, the weight of deception lifted, replaced by a fragile tapestry of understanding and acceptance. Outside, James peeked in, touched by the scene. He stepped away softly, giving them privacy. The monitors continued their rhythmic beep. The hush felt sacred, as if time itself paused to honor this final revelation. Margaret drew a ragged breath. "One more favor," she whispered, her voice fading. promise me you'll look after each other. A true marriage, real or not, what matters is devotion. You have it, treasure it. Lucas and Sophia promised through trembling smiles, each pressing a gentle kiss to Margaret's cheek. She closed her eyes again, fatigue overwhelming her. Yet her faint smile remained, a testament to her final solace. The couple lingered at her side, hands laced together in silent vigil, hearts swelling with gratitude and grief. Some days later, Margaret passed peacefully in her sleep 2 nights later, leaving behind a legacy of compassion and wisdom. The funeral was a small, intimate gathering. As the autumn sky spread over the cemetery, Lucas and Sophia stood side by side, tears blending with the crisp wind. Noah clutched Sophia's hand, leaning against her for comfort. James stood near, offering quiet support. Though their original lie had been the impetus for this journey, love had blossomed in its midst. Love for Margaret, for Noah's future, and for each other. In the aftermath of her passing, Lucas and Sophia found themselves stepping into a life not built on falsehoods, but on a shared promise to honor the chance Margaret had given them. Standing at the graveside, Sophia slipped her hand into Lucas's. He drew her close, pressing his lips to her temple. Pain and longing braided together, yet hope glimmered, an unspoken vow that their bond, once a charade, now stood on the firm ground of truth. Margaret's final days had witnessed their transformation, granting them a silent blessing to move forward free of secrets. They walked away from the cemetery, tears in their eyes, but warmth in their hearts. Though sorrow weighed heavily, it was a sorrow woven with gratitude, a quiet resolve to live fully and love genuinely. In the hush of that moment, they realized Margaret had not only shaped their path, she had also set them free. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.